the Sooners are down 14 points to Carolina in the first ever meeting. Hawkins, freshman, takes it in the pocket, gets hit as he throws it into coverage again, and picked off again at the 40 of Carolina down the near sideline. That's E-Man Worry towards the end zone. Are you kidding me? Touchdown Carolina. Touchdown Nick E-Man Worry.
This is 365 Sports.
High throw it, picked off. Jahdae Barrett taking it all the way back.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Here's Sharp. They drop 8 into coverage. Touchdown, Louisville! Ja'Cory Brooks!
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Back there. Oh, another pick. This one's got space. And Oklahoma is out of bounds at the 2 with Danny Stutzman. What a read by the linebacker.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Muse is knocked down. Jacob Parrish is feeling it.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go on this Wednesday afternoon. 365 Sports on YouTube. Also, you and some watching our show on 365 Sports YT on Twitter. Craig Smoak and Paul Catalina to my right and to my left. And I'm David Smoak. We appreciate your time. If you wouldn't mind, right off the top, hit the like button. If you are the first time watching us or you've watched us a handful of times and you have not subscribed, we'd appreciate that. And if you have, then we thank you for that and also pass it on to more. So it's the day after the ACC settlement. We have news on different coaching staff additions, et cetera, some of them very unique, in a game that's going to be played at an NFL stadium in the Big Ten and Big 12 men's basketball. But we start with the day after the ACC settlement, and a few guys who cover, reporters who cover the ACC pretty thoroughly. Brian Murphy, for example. Jim Phillips and the ACC deserve credit for coming up with solutions, expansion, added extra money, which could be spread around, found a way to keep FSU Clemson happy for now. Most of the Pac-12 didn't jump until they had no other choice. Be interesting if the ACC can give middle tier a real choice when things open back up again in 31 and 36. Of course, that's 2031, 2036. One more note. This is from an attorney. David McKenzie's been following this and other particular realignment type news. Today's resolution begins the next chapter of this storied league and further solidifies the ACC as a premier conference. That's the quote from ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips. But McKenzie's not a fan of it, saying he needs to get a second PhD in wishful thinking and third in blinking.
Yeah, now where there is some truth in this is an opportunity for the next 5 years for the ACC to try and make a move. The Big 12 is trying to do that too. I mean, every time we talk to Brett Yormark, you hear him talking, he is, setting up this new Big 12 with the 16 teams for that next TV deal. That's where every move is going because it's not going to happen overnight. So the ACC has an opportunity here for 5 years. But at the end of 5 years, if you think that there's not going to be a shakeup or he thinks that this problem is solved, I think that that's naive because, we've seen now the last few times that TV contracts have come up, there's a shakeup. So what's to say that won't happen again? So the ACC has 5 years to be ready on all fronts, to be ready to maybe be an elite conference in football, or be ready to be a completely different thing altogether.
One other note, Craig, and then go ahead. You go ahead and respond to that. I'll follow up.
Yeah, so I think the only way it really could have gone worse in my eyes for the ACC was if they would just announce that everybody's free to go right now. Beyond that, I think they basically let you know that here's the get-out-of-jail pass if that's how you feel as a Florida State fan or as a North Carolina fan or a Clemson fan or a whoever fan that's looking at jumping over the fence to the greener, quote-unquote, pastures. I think yesterday was your slip to go on this field trip here in 5 years and go explore what else is out there. I don't know how you really read that any other way. I see from their standpoint of it being a positive for the ACC that it's not being fully dismantled right now, and it's not like, hey, there's zero buyout. Florida State can leave today, and that's it. But beyond that fact, I don't know how they really won this because I do think it raises a lot of questions. And look, it's kind of also a fool's errand to declare winners and losers 24
Absolutely.
hours after a decision that we have no idea how it's going to play out or what 5 years from now looks like. I mean, we've made all these assumptions about so many different things, and typically they don't go exactly as expected. But, on paper, which is a phrase I like to use a lot because it's actually the facts that we have to deal with, I think this was a much bigger win for the schools that are looking for a jump here in a few years than it was for the conference. But as the commissioner and to kind of soothe the souls of those who aren't those looking to jump over the fence here in the near future, I think you've got to celebrate what you can, right? So the fact that it's not dismantling right now and the fact that you do have 5 years to maybe figure out some other options that maybe turn this into a much better ACC than you could have imagined, even if some teams leave, there is that hope. So there's hope. And, yeah, you gotta use that as a motivation to have these schools go and get things done and try to be the best versions of themselves, just like the Big 12 schools got a kick in the ass when everything went down. I mean, hey, Wake Forest and Louisville and whoever else, like if you care about this conference and you're not already planning your exit, like we got to get our stuff together and we got to really work hard these next 5 years. So that's the message you have to deliver. But, yeah, everybody who's really paid attention to this, we're all side-eyeing them and going, we know you have to say that, but, like, you didn't really win anything yesterday. You just won 5 years of time, basically.
I would love to hear Jim Phillips come out and just be frank one time going, like, look, not ideal.
We bought ourselves some time. For right now, we're okay, but we have work to do.
They bought themselves time is exactly the way to put it.
Like, I would like him to come out and say, here's the message I'd like to send. Florida State, Clemson, anybody else who's thinking about leaving, we're going to spend these next 5 years proving you wrong and making you want to stay. And anybody else, we're doubling down on everything that we need to do to be competitive in this. But that's not how Jim Phillips does things. So that's where I'd like to see him change.
Here's from David McKenzie. I got some quotes that are not tweets, etc. FSU and Clemson just proved they cannot be trusted. This, again, different opinions. That's what we do here. It's not one-sided, although sometimes we could all have the same opinion. The ACC settlement with FSU and Clemson isn't a show of strength. It's an admission of weakness. After months of legal maneuvering, courtroom theatrics, baseless sovereign immunity arguments, the conference has now rewarded two of its most disloyal members with more money and a structured escape hatch. If this is stability, it's built on sand. Let's be clear, FSU Clemson are the most unreliable contract partners in college athletics. They signed a 20-year grant of rights in 2016, enjoyed every financial benefit, and then spent the last 15 months trying to wriggle free using the most dubious legal strategy available, sovereign immunity.
Yeah, and I didn't get into the weeds on like all the actual court details and all that, but I followed along pretty closely. And the FSU lawyers were some busy folks. There's no doubt about that. I agree with him that they are not to be trusted. They're very much in the vein of an OU Texas, except for OU and Texas never quite just said outwardly, like, we're leaving in 5 years and we're suing you to get out and get out cheaper and all that. And they never pulled those moves. They just did it even more nefariously just in the middle of the night without much warning. Even though, looking back, there were little warnings along the way, but not to the extent that you would have anticipated what dropped the morning Brett Zorneman just blew the top off of the story before it was set to be released. But, yeah, I would not trust them whatsoever. I don't sing Kumbaya around the ACC campfire this summer with them. I kicked them out to the curb, if anything, on a lot of matters. You can't really do that in terms of some of the decisions that have to be made. But, yeah, if you're any of these other schools, it's not Clemson, North Carolina, I mean, maybe like a Georgia Tech or somebody like that, then yeah, you don't trust them. You don't think they have your best interest in mind. And clearly they've had only their own self-interest in mind. And you know what? It paid off for them because they got what they wanted in the end. There was two camps I saw of Florida State fans yesterday. The one main camp altogether was celebrating the fact that this was basically a win for them. I mean, and not even basically, it was a win for them because they got pretty much all that they wanted. So it was a win. And most people were celebrating that, but then there was the other camp that was frustrated because they really thought that they were going to get out like right now. Like they had been led to believe that they were getting out and they were going to be in the SEC or the Big Ten like by 2026. And that's probably not happening unless you just want to cut a check for no real reason to rush into this thing for $180 million or whatever it's going to be. So there was a few people disgruntled. But then, once you get over like, I can't have my way right this second, but you're still going to get your way. You just got to be a little bit more patient. I think everybody was excited about what Florida State pulled off, and the other schools that are in similar spots, they seem to be excited about it as well. And the ACC fans, the fans of the teams that are like NC State and Boston College, they were the ones left going, well, what do we get? Like, where are we now in all of this? Because you just gave them, the traitors, the ones that are trying to sink the conference, you just defaulted and gave into them and gave them everything they wanted and more.
And even more.
And more.
What the Austin, the president, yeah, even more.
You gave them what they wanted and more. And so, yeah, if you're those other schools, like, you're probably pissed. But the only thing I can imagine is there had to be something legally where you just felt like it wasn't worth pursuing any longer. Mm-hmm. What, if it was you thought that you could win, but maybe it was going to take another couple years and that's just not really feasible, or you just look at the money being burnt and you go, we can't keep doing this. This is not good for the conference. I don't know, but something made them sit down and trigger that deal yesterday. So that's going to have to be answered at some point by Jim Phillips on why they went ahead, especially when it seemed to be so one-sided.
David Hale, who covers the ACC, we had Murphy on, we had David Hale on. His question was, did FSU and Clemson win? Short answer, yeah, mostly. If the ultimate goal was to exit the ACC as soon as possible and land a full share in the SEC or the Big Ten, as Oklahoma, Texas, UCLA, and USC did, then no, this isn't the ideal outcome. But everything else is pretty great for them. And, Paul, you mentioned this, and you've mentioned it more than once. This now is the clock is ticking. David Hale, there's a big clock ticking. It's, in a good way, a sign of progress for the ACC that has always fallen behind the rest at times. Worst case scenario for the remaining ACC team, let's say 4 schools leave for another conference. That's $300 million in a payday to remaining members. That's still not nothing. And combined, without being reduced, ESPN deal. It's enough to survive a bit longer. Survival is the game now. Don't wait again until you're in this position. Work and react to it so you're not the next time.
Yeah, I mean, that's where Jim Phillips, I mean, he's had these moments where he like sacks up for a minute. Like he's like, yeah, like the earlier when they kind of made the statement about where they felt they were. He's like, yeah, we're tough in the ACC. And then immediately after that, he comes out with like, hey, we're positioned to be great. Okay, yeah, maybe, but you need to send a message across the thing of, here's the thing they need to say out loud, which they haven't. Do you want Florida State and Clemson to stay? Do you want the teams to stay? Say it out loud. Say it out loud emphatically that we want you to be in this league. And we've done these things to make you happy to stay in this league. And we're going to prove to you that leaving this league in 5 years will be bad. We want to prove that to you. You don't need to kiss their ass, but you have to say it out loud. Then you need to tell the other teams, what can we do to prove these assholes wrong? That's what you need to do. And they're not doing that.
The only real win yesterday for the ACC, I mean, and again, I hope the conference is fine, and I hope there's no more of this in 5 or 6 years, but we all know there's going to be all sorts of collateral or shrapnel. Would that not have been stunning if they would have had enough power to get both of those two schools, Clemson and FSU, to get more money, get higher percentages of the revenue sharing, and sign an extension? That would have been basically the only real win, but they they did push back the alarm clock for another 5 years.
Well, that would have been what's best for college sports, is to have the ACC, like all these people that are rooting for the death of it now suddenly because they want to be vultures and go pick the carcass apart. I understand that, this feeling of like conquering new lands and whatnot, like you're playing a game of Risk and you're getting new territory. That's very much the feeling there was with the Big 12's pursuit of the pack. And remember when the Big Ten had no interest in Oregon and Washington? You remember that the whole time? They have no interest. They absolutely had interest. That was all BS. And so we know there's vultures swirling, and they've been circling around the ACC for a couple of years now. I think the Big Ten and SEC are certainly two of those birds in the air right now, and the Big 12's the other. And I don't know exactly how they're flying at the moment, but they're circling this, and they're watching very intently to pick the bones, if at all possible. And so, yeah, Jim Phillips has got to figure out not only how you survive these 5 years, but, what's the long-term plan and beyond. But, yeah, yesterday was not a good day for him or for the, league itself, because it does look like two of their rebellious kids got their way. And their way is basically they get to move out of the house earlier than anticipated. And before they move out, you're giving them more allowance, and you're giving them a new car, and you're giving them, no curfew.
A credit card with no limit.
And they're getting like all this stuff they didn't even ask for almost, it feels like. And it's like very puzzling because that's not the way this is supposed to work. It's kind of backwards. But it's worked for them. And so, yeah, for the ACC, like what is the plan moving forward? And you have to be aware that everybody's looking at the other teams that are sitting there going, we could use that one. We'd love to have that Clemson team. They'd be great here in the Southeastern Conference or in the Big Ten or whatever. Like, that's going on. So you're going to have to, fend off that and all of the, subversion and story leaks and PR moves and everything else that's going to be coming out over the next few years in regards to the stability or lack thereof of your conference.
Go Black 45, Paul and Craig. Phillips, mentioned how UNC was going about the same thing behind their back. ACC was disloyal by doing everything that Notre Dame wants, even if it hurt the entire conference.
Yeah,
thank you for the chat.
I think that, look, this is a conference that has weird influences on all corners of it. They're football-wise a conference that only two teams regularly win the thing. And have done anything. They're a conference that's aligned with Notre Dame that gets to play games against Notre Dame, and Notre Dame is now telling them which games they would like to play as opposed to the even rotation that they had. So,
and they have all the sway in that relationship Notre Dame does.
Yeah, there's no, what's the ACC going to tell them? No,
fine, you go to the Big Ten then.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the only card they have to play is they know that Notre Dame doesn't want to deal with the Big Ten because Notre Dame can't go to Ohio State. Well, we think this, and Ohio State can go, yeah, we don't care. So they can do that. They can be the mover and the shaker in that conference and not be fully in it and not in it at all for football and say, here's who we'd like to play every year. We'll play 5 games, but 3 of them better be against your good teams because we want the TV numbers.
Yeah, you're dictating the schedule.
Well, I think you left off there. There's also Tobacco Road and their longstanding, hold of how you define their power and their influence, and obviously the basketball piece of this, which has not always been the best North Star to follow. So, yeah, there's the Notre Dame piece. There's the Florida State, Clemson, and the disgruntles. There's the Tobacco Road schools, although I know North Carolina a part of that. But, I think maybe in terms of not singling out North Carolina, if I heard that correctly, I think just because they're not part of this particular chapter. So yesterday, to me, was just about Florida State and Clemson, since that's where the lawsuits were all focused in on, and so they settled with them. And it did have widespread ramifications, but I think that's probably why he wasn't taking a jab at North Carolina. And he's also not really in a position to jab at anybody at the moment, I don't think, if you're Jim Phillips either.
Is the Pat 40, is that audio, Garrett? Are we allowed to use, it's a video. Are we allowed to use that?
Sure.
It's 40 seconds. Here's Dan Wetzel, Yahoo Sports, will join us today at 3:40. We will also have other guests throughout the show today, including Phil Snow, recharged, and will join us today at 4. John Cooper on the NFL Draft Combine, and John Wilner from the perspective of Stanford and Cal and what they're looking at, and also just the fact that he covers college football. Here's a 40-second clip on the reaction to the ACC settlement with Clemson and also Florida State.
ACC. Beyond that, though, yeah, bad bad signals and further inequity. And I think, honestly, you're going to have schools, I would imagine, that are, on the shorter end of this stick. They're going to be looking at their options and saying, you know what? I'm Louisville. I'm Pittsburgh. How's Big 12 doing? Do we need to possibly look at going someplace else where we're going to get a better revenue shake? I wouldn't say it's out of the question for schools that aren't just, steeped in loyalty to the ACC and maybe feel like they have been handed a bad deal here. So, I don't say they're going to get up and leave now, but you watch in 5 years and see what the possible exit plans are.
Again, the ACC is getting more money per team, per school than the Big 12. It's a little bit more, but it's more. And then you have to look at the value of what actually that would bring. But we're getting ahead of it. But I wanted to put that out there because that was also a reaction from others not being a part of what they think might be that revenue scratch, so to speak. But go be a part of it, Louisville and Pitt. Go win your games, and you get also more in your coffers.
Yeah, don't let Texas win the championship on the way out, or in this case, North Carolina or Clemson or whoever. Don't let them win the ACC these last few years that you're going to be a part. But, yeah, it's only natural. I mean, there's a lot of talk about, what happens next, obviously. I think yesterday just really kickstarts that because it's real. It's not like there's this lawsuit with no end in sight. It could go on for 2 more years. It could go on for 2 more months, and, you just don't know. You're just talking about it. Yesterday is actually something real and legitimate, so now you can go, all right, clock starts now, and it's 5 years, and what happens between now and then, and what's going to happen certainly is everybody else on the outside, I just referred to the Vultures that are swirling. Yeah, Greg Sankey's out there going, is this the way that I get Clemson and bring them into the league, or whoever he might be eyeing? And certainly the Big Ten we know would be interested. And yeah, I think the Big 12 would be ready there to pick apart some of the bones as well and bring in some of the teams that would logically make sense. And Louisville certainly at the top of that list. I do think that's probably a little bit more of a ways out given this just happened yesterday. But it's just logical to think about that now, knowing that there's not a 2036 date that's rock solid, and there's not a lawsuit that's never ending. It's like the lawsuit's over, the timer started, and so, yeah, everybody scramble to their jets and figure out what you can get done here. And I would imagine Brett Yormark was more than ready, had the plane fueled up, and was ready to hop in the cockpit and go do whatever he needed to do, and we'll be ready. And I know we'll talk to him probably here in the next few weeks, and this will be brought up. But, yeah, just naturally – I mean, there's only 3 conferences really left standing of the old power, or there's still 4 with the ACC. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, and the Pac still exists, but it's not a part of that group now at this point. But yeah, it's just natural that just like when the Pac fell apart and everybody took a look, and the only one who didn't take a bite was the SEC. But the ACC now wounded and struggling. There's going to be all those other leagues taking a look at how they can better themselves. But it does become a lot more complicated, the TV deals and what you get added if you added certain amounts and this and that. But I guess those are discussions for later on. But, yeah, certainly everybody's swirling right now and looking at what they can potentially take here in the next few years.
We cover the Big 12, but we cover all of college football. And the ACC has some pretty damn good logos outside of the ones that just kind of feel like they got taken care of a little bit more than others.
And I should say, to Pat Forty's point, not just the Vultures of the conference leader circling, but yeah, the schools themselves that are in that league now have to start going, well, we can't just plan for this in 5 years. We have to start kicking the tires, and I'm sure they already all have been, because the one thing about realignment that doesn't probably get stated enough is they're all talking to each other all the time. This isn't just out of the blue moon. I mean, I'm sure there's a cold call here and there, but there's always conversation going on because things are always changing. So I'd imagine there's already been plenty of talks, if you're Louisville, with everybody imaginable. It wouldn't make – they're not going to go to the Big Ten, but I guarantee you somebody from there at some point has talked to somebody from the Big Ten just to kick tires and go would there ever be a possibility? And the answer might have been absolutely not. But you've at least kicked the tires on that idea. And everybody's going to kick the tires on every idea imaginable to best situate their individual school, just like when Oklahoma and Texas left. Everybody didn't go kumbaya originally. They pretended to. But Oklahoma State and Baylor,
Kansas.
and TCU, and Kansas were all calling the Big Ten, and they were all calling the SEC, and they were all calling the ACC, and they were like, so what do you think? Like, if this were to fall? And so that's absolutely what the ACC schools have probably been doing, knowing that this was going to come at some point in time, but are certainly doing as of right now.
All right, we will have Dan Wetzel. He'll be our segment coming up in about 12 to 14 minutes. This is interesting. This got Emory pretty good. TCU and Baylor have flipped their staffs from what they were during the glory years in the early 2010s. TCU's football staff now includes former Baylor All-American Biletnikoff Award winner and first-round pick Corey Coleman. We already knew they had Kendall and Randy Clements, who just joined them after he's been around a few other programs since he left. Josh Bookbinder and Brian Norwood, former defensive coordinator at Baylor in the secondaries, and then Kaz Kazadi, strength and conditioning. Baylor has Jared Anderson, who was a part of Gary Patterson's staff from almost day one. Paul Gonzalez now in the secondary, and Gary Patterson, of course, has been in and out as an analyst and also on that roster. And then Shihan Jayaraja, I'm living in the upside-down world, basically. Now, Emory...
It's the upside down. It's from Stranger Things.
Oh, okay. Good. But Emory, this right here, Corey Coleman, this is a kick in the nuts, isn't it? Yep.
He is Emory's favorite all-time Baylor Bear, right? Yeah. Yeah.
And do we have the tweet from him, Garrett? Were you able to capture that one? There's the TCU tweet about all of them, including David, in case we didn't bring him up. He's also a part of the additions to TCU. So Corey Coleman mentioned that he was joining the staff, and he said, Baylor, I still love you. Please don't bite. And Emory's done with no, you can't.
No. Look, Corey Coleman feels to me like that's like the one step too far. Like you're good. Okay. Look,
it's like LaDainian Tomlinson being on the Baylor staff.
Yeah, it's just like how do you do it? Like when I saw his tweet with him in the purple shirt, it felt like somebody made it with AI. Like it just doesn't. It's not I couldn't. And Corey. Here's the other thing. I don't think of the only one we maybe know better than him is RG3 of like the all-time great, the elite guy. Like we had a really long-standing relationship with him when he was here. So like we've known like young little Corey superstar. Corey, we were at the draft when he got drafted. We were right there when he got picked up. So I feel like he called up, like you get a call from an old friend like, hey, guess what? I got a new job. You're like, oh, congratulations. And like, where are you? And then he tells you and you're like, oh, good. And good for TCU and good for Corey Coleman. It's just so weird to see who's probably the greatest wide receiver in Baylor history, arguably.
He's the one with the Biletnikoff Award.
So
first-round pick.
Yeah, the greatest wide receiver in Baylor history wearing purple. It's just so weird.
Yeah, I mean, there's coaches are like they travel around the country and around schools like more than nomads. I mean, like they don't have really any loyalty. I mean, coaches just move to and fro, so you're going to see some cross-pollination with schools. Like there's plenty of Georgia staffers that coach under Saban and vice versa and things like that. But to see Corey Coleman in particular in TCU gear, I mean, it does make your skin crawl if you followed his career at Baylor and just the rivalry and whatnot. That's like a bridge too far, I think, for a lot of people. I mean, the coaches, like they got 10 different schools shirts in their closets. Like they don't have any real loyalty. And I don't blame them for that. But yeah, he's a coach now, so you might see him in a Texas shirt one day, and you might see him in an A&M shirt one day. But to see him at least initially in a TCU shirt is just it just hits different and not in a good way. And just the cross-pollination of the staffs, like I said, that's not all that surprising, especially when you got coaches that as much as they move around, they typically do find themselves back like where home is, eventually, or where they know their bread and butter. So a lot of these guys coached in the Big 12 for the last 10 years in the state of Texas and whatnot, been in and out. So you're going to see some crossover, but it's weird though. the amount of former Baylor guys that have ended up on Sonny Dykes' staff. Like I don't know if him and Browse were just like roll dogs or what.
They think they were on staff together at one point.
I guess stemming from the time at Texas Tech, but I mean, that was 35 years ago. Not really, but close to it actually at this point. But yeah, I mean, the number of guys that have landed on that staff under Sonny Dykes has been like crazy. So yeah, I'm sure that was a little weird for TC fans initially, but like by the 6th hire, then you're kind of used to it by now.
Yeah, the quote from Corey Coleman is plot twist, and he talks about thanking TCU, bringing him on a wide receivers coach. Then he goes, to all my Baylor fans, ... I still love you. And Emory, there's a retweet from Emory with the middle finger. That's uncalled for. And then, so, hey, listen, he has a chance to be on a staff. Good for him. I didn't know exactly what he'd been doing since he was no longer a part of the NFL. It's an opportunity for Corey Coleman.
Yeah, I'm happy for him. I didn't know, where his career was at this point. Obviously, the NFL did not work out to the expectations of himself or anybody else for that matter. He was a bust of a first-round pick. He was. There's no other way to put it. Didn't love it when he got drafted by Cleveland to begin with. We should have seen the writing on the wall that like, oh, well, he's screwed because we've seen that so many times with that franchise. But, I mean, remember Hard Knocks, the whole Jordans thing at the beginning? Like, it just never – his NFL career did not get off to a strong start or with a strong franchise. He was around – I mean, he was with the Chiefs practice squad, I think, for like a split second, and he was like on a couple of others. But his career just like, it didn't go anywhere. And so I didn't know what he's up to here lately. But obviously he's in coaching now, and good for him. And for as much as you might hate it, he might be the Baylor offensive coordinator in 10 years from now. Like, we have no idea,
I mean, if you have a staff where you play college football that doesn't invite you to be a part of it because they have good people where they are, Dallas Baker, the wide receivers coach. So it's part of the deal. Good for him. Good for all of them. It's just interesting that staff was torn apart and now very much just 80, 90 miles north on I-35. So, Craig, you've brought up the new football facilities. Remember, it was at Alabama that had the waterfall, and everybody had these amazing type amenities. Well, Texas Tech, we've talked about their unbelievable, the Womble football facility. Look at the top in the bullet points. Got a barber shop in there.
Well, that's pretty standard. That's status quo nowadays.
A podcast studio for players or whoever. The locker room, of course, the weight room. We've seen videos. If you haven't seen the video, it's been out there. A 2-story team lounge, hydro and cryo recovery areas, Patrick Mahomes walkthrough room. I went through the one that Baylor has, the Fudge Center, and it is unbelievable. But this is the one that Texas Tech is showing off, and it is incredible. And obviously, they're very, very proud of it. But the barber shop, that guy's going to make a ton of money.
Yeah, I don't even know how that works exactly, but they've been college football teams. They've had barbershops and facilities now for going on several years. I mean, I remember that back in the water. I mean, that was when the excess really was like at its height, was when I always use the same example because to me it was like the tipping point of excess of like we have so much money we don't know what to do with it outside of going out in front of the facility and setting it on fire was when Alabama had like crimson colored waterfalls, and I was just like, God, that just sounds so like, and this was before you were paying players, so you had to do something with it. But that was also when barbershops, like I don't know who did it first, if it was like Texas or somebody, but that's been kind of commonplace. All this other stuff, I don't know how common most of it is. Like the cryo, I think is probably pretty common now.
All that stuff.
The walkthrough room, like I don't know how common that is. I think that's a really cool idea. Like that's especially like no matter where you are, you can just go and take the defense in there and walk through and have all this room. I think that's really genius, and I don't know how common, like I said, that is. So if it's not common, then that to me is probably the coolest feature because all this other stuff I've sort of seen before or it's just sort of typical. But regardless of what's brand new or what's cutting edge or whatever, there's facility is cutting edge. Like it's as nice as it can possibly be. And I know one thing, they got their money's worth in PR because, damn, we've heard like 20 stories on this thing in the last 2 months. So people are clearly amazed by it, and that's great. And they've got a lot of play out of this facility.
I don't have a problem with one part of it. Like, listen, we do podcasts like, hey, you do your thing and we'll do ours, Texas Tech.
Yeah.
No, I think that's pretty cool. I think it's one of the things branding-wise, guys are going to do. And it's going to be like Tech is better at NIL than a lot of places. So if you can, set up podcasts through your NIL arm then and have a place to do it that's, in your facility, heck, do it.
Or just not even through them, but just doing it anyway, just having a place to do it,
Yep, and so it's always something, and part of commitment to make sure that you do everything you can to get better, recruit better, entice athletes to, hey, wait a minute, they've got some great bells and whistles, and yes, NIL too, which Tech is doing, and a lot of schools need to do. Even if they can do it better. If you don't, you're going to, next time there's a break in the action, that you find yourself probably on the outside looking in.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing what they should be doing, which is investing as much as they can. They're very fortunate to have, certainly one big-name donor that's been kind of at the forefront of a lot of this, but obviously there's others making this happen as well. And so they're doing exactly what you hope your school would be doing, which is getting the nicest facilities imaginable and even going above and beyond, I think, in their case, where they could probably have stopped at a certain point, but they clearly were like, we're going for the best and the biggest, and they got it based on everything that we've seen. So that'll be a great recruiting tool. I think I've already seen it was it Lee Hunter, the UCF defensive lineman, I think maybe, or it was somebody else they picked up in the transfer portal, of which we knew all about how they were throwing around money there, and the class that they got in return. But he mentioned like the walkthrough area being like really cool, and just the facilities, like just feeling like he didn't need to go and even visit anywhere else. So that's what you're hoping for with a place like that. And it should pay great dividends for them. And there's no doubt that Tech is going to be as competitive as anybody when it comes to keeping their head above water and trying to swim with the Sharks.
All right, when we come back, Dan Wetzel, Yahoo Sports, I contacted him. He and Ross Dellinger and also Pat Forty, who you heard from a little bit earlier, had their podcast yesterday after the ACC settlement news was official with Clemson and Florida State and the conference and everyone else. His thoughts about what's next. You may have that 5-year bubble or timeline, yet you can't wait until then. Otherwise, you're left behind. We'll have that with Dan Wetzel, Phil Snow, associate head coach at Nebraska, John Cooper on the combine, and also now it starts to get real serious with the draft 5 weeks away. And then West Virginia, their 2025 schedule today. John Wilner from the West Coast and Paul Catalina's Top 5. This is 365 Sports. Petty Clinic, lowT.com. 1 out of every 3 to 4 men have symptomatic issues of low testosterone. You're like, I'm good. Okay. That's good. I hope you're never one of those 3 or 4 men that end up with low testosterone dropping, and that creates issues. For example, your sleep habits, your energy, your focus, a lot of that. And yes, you could even your performance in the bedroom. It can happen. And it's just, you could be in really good shape. You could also be fit. Everything's good, young and fit. And then in 35, 38, 39, 40, it starts to change a little bit. Not you maybe, but somebody else, and maybe it is you. Dr. Petty can help you out if you feel like any of those symptoms have crept into your lifestyle. Dr. Petty, pettycliniclowT.com. Contact him. Tell him I sent you. He can set up an appointment for you to have your blood drawn, get the results, and if your testosterone level dropped or below what it should be, or a lot below what it should be, he can put you in a program to help you increase your testosterone level, and you can become the high-performance man that you want to be, need to be, used to be. Dr. Kent Petty at pettycliniclowT.com.
Month at Allen Samuels in Waco. Right now, drive home a 2025 Ram 1500 Laramie Crew Cab or Ram Lone Star Crew Cab, both with massive $15,000 off MSRP. Looking for unbeatable value? Drive home a Ram 1500 Tradesman Quad Cab starting at just $35,995, or upgrade to a Tradesman Crew Cab for only $37,995. These deals won't last long. Hurry to Allen Samuels today.
Come by, let's be friends.
I'll never get used to this.
Whatever it is you wrangle, whatever seeds you sow, no matter what you nurture or what you choose to grow, at Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, we're proud to protect all Texans.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student-athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
365 Sports, Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak. I'm David Smoak. We appreciate your time. Dan Wetzel, Yahoo Sports, joins us on 365 Sports on the day after the ACC settlement with Clemson and Florida State. What does it mean? Dan, thank you very much. I watched part of your podcast with Ross and Pat Forty, et cetera. What do you think this actually means? Is it peace and quiet, or is this just the calm before yet another storm down the road?
Realignment never sleeps, right? I think it's, I don't know. You never I always say calm, and then there's something happens, but it would seem that way. The big issue right now is there's no incentive for the Big Ten or the SEC to expand at this moment. They both have media deals locked up. Even if they added teams, they would get more money. There's not like an open, you'd renegotiate. ESPN's not in the mood to renegotiate. They want the ACC to do well. They have an ACC deal also. That's a good deal for ESPN. So they're, it's like, where are you going? So for Clemson and Florida State, who are suing to get out of their grant of rights and have the ability to go to another conference, even if they were to wave a magic wand and be free right now, there's probably not a home to go to. Maybe if they're available, that changes, but there's nobody banging on the door. So what this does is in all likelihood create 5-6 years of stability at the ACC until the grant of rights, the cost of buying back your rights to leave gets to a reasonable number of about $75 million. And by that point in 2030, the Big Ten will be looking for a new media deal. The Big 12 would be looking for a new media deal. The NCAA basketball tournament would be up. There could be a whole lot of tumult at that point. But I think what this should do is keep everything as the status quo for the next, 4 or 5 years, because it just makes economic sense for everybody to just sort of stand pat. And I guess we'll see what the world looks like in 5 years. It's hard to look back. You think this is what it'll be because this is how it is now, but you look back 5 years ago and you wouldn't have believed where we were at. First off, 5 years ago, we're about to go into COVID. So it was really a wild time, but you don't know. Who knows what 5 years, what are network televisions? What are, is Netflix the player at that point? There's so many things that could be upheaved between now and then. So I think we're going to get some stability, which is what the ACC was going for. It's not the best deal for the ACC, but it's better than being the Pac-12.
So how does the ACC convince Florida State and Clemson to stay in 5 years? And how do they get better across the board so that if they do in fact leave, it doesn't sting as much?
So the first part is really what they're doing right now, which is giving them more money. And if this is based now on television ratings, not success. Florida State's a big brand, as they like to say. It's got a big fan base. It's in the state of Florida. It also went 2-10 last year, but it can attract big television numbers, particularly in some of their rivalry games. The ACC is going to have Notre Dame play Clemson, Miami, and Florida State more often. That always delivers good ratings anytime you can play Notre Dame. So the possibilities are here for Clemson and Florida State, those type of programs, to get 15 to 20 million additional dollars each year in their conference revenue, which would put them pretty close to what the Big Ten and the SEC are getting. And I know we've become, I've said this on the show, I hate that we root for revenue. Fans root for revenue and ratings and things when it's about winning. And congrats. Okay, look, Clemson doesn't make as much money as Purdue football. Purdue football makes more money than Clemson. Who cares? Clemson's won national titles. Purdue doesn't. Which program would you? If you're a fan, who would you rather be a part of? Is it all just how much do you cheer because they remodeled the AD's office, or we were able to buy out a defensive coordinator's contract? Great. I'd rather win. So I think that's the second part. You're going to give them a lot of money, and they're going to be in the ballpark. And then here's the thing. It's a lot easier to win in the ACC than it is if you say, okay, now I'm going to go to the SEC, or I'm going to go to the Big Ten and try to win there. Especially if we expand this playoff and there's two guaranteed spots in the ACC to the playoff, which is a real possibility. I don't love that, but let's say that's where we go. It's a lot easier to finish top two in the ACC if you're Florida State and Clemson against a bunch of schools that, are not on your equal. Maybe in North Carolina is, maybe in Miami, but most of the schools are not of your equal than it is to go into the SEC and say, I'll finish top four. And so if they can offer a close enough amount of money and a path to not just the playoff, but to winning, which would create more money because fans would be excited and you'd be selling tickets and T-shirts and all of that stuff and donations, then perhaps that's the route you could go. I always thought one of the reasons the Big 12 should have been driving the force for a playoff was because if you go back when Oklahoma and Texas were in that league, they could have said, hey, look at how easy your path is to get in. You have advantages over the other teams in the league, Oklahoma. Why would you leave this to get into the dogfight of the SEC where, Oklahoma was making a lot of playoffs out of the Big 12. I doubt, nothing against Oklahoma. Maybe they do it, maybe they don't. Great program, but I doubt they make it as often when they're in the SEC because it's just a tougher sledding. So maybe you can do that. Will that work? Probably not. But I think you at least have a time frame where you can look and say, all right, over the next 5 years, let's build towards that. Say, hey, this grass right here is better than just going into some super conference. And here's the thing: you go to the SEC, it is a dogfight. You go to the Big Ten, great. Welcome to the Big Ten. You know who isn't moving out of the top of the Big Ten? Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. You're not getting them out of the way. They're going to be there. So you're those teams. You're the big programs in your league. Why not just be that? I wish we could go back and have 5, 6, 7 really good leagues, like-minded schools, 10 teams a league, round robin, all of that stuff. College conference realignment has done such damage to college sports more than these lawsuits and NIL and the transfer portal and anything else. It's just this constant drive for a little bit more money that's just, to me, has caused so much tumult in college football and basketball.
No, I think you're dead on dead. And it's fun to talk about TV ratings and things like that and mention them and compare them to things. But, the whole bragging rights aspect of it, as though it's these accomplishments for everybody to root for the networks, just feels really backwards and very weird. But there's been a lot of talk about Notre Dame and, eventually they're going to be forced to do this and eventually they'll be forced to do that. And then last year they make more money than anybody, basically, just being independent on Notre Dame. They're going to try and be that for as long as they can. But do you see these as some of the moving pieces that eventually force them into a situation where they no longer have that choice years maybe down the line?
Maybe. Right now they have a great situation because they get 5 games every year. They have the scheduling certainty of 5 ACC games. And it's going to be 2 of those games is going to be against Clemson, Florida State, or Miami, like a rotation. So you're getting some marquee games there. That's 5. And people always say, well, they're not in a conference. Well, they play 5 ACC teams. They play Navy every single year. And they play Stanford and USC every single year. So they basically have 8 games every year lined up. And then they have 4 non-conference. So they're kind of in a conference. It's just their own conference. And it works perfectly for them. They're able to get a maximum number of home games. They play this thing called the Shamrock Series. They'll move around the country. They play all over the country where Notre Dame wants to do it. If they lose that scheduling ability, that's the thing that would drive them potentially to a playoff, to a conference. Because if the Big Ten if all these teams go to the Big Ten and the SEC, do they and kind of lock them out of a good schedule? Is there enough other teams to schedule, or could they maybe get that same deal with what's left of the ACC or the Big 12? I don't know. Notre Dame is going to do everything it can to stay independent. It works for them. It's a point of pride. It's what the university wants to be. I think it's the key to them being successful is being able to recruit all over the country and be a national program rather than just another program in the Midwest. And they'll do everything they can. But this is not a great thing for Notre Dame. What they've got right now is a great thing for Notre Dame. And you can see it with this playoff and with Marcus Freeman. Like, this is a hot program now, right? Made the championship game. I would imagine they'd be preseason top 5, if not top 3. There's no reason that you wouldn't look at it and go, yeah, Notre Dame's in a great spot for the next half decade. But could this push them into something else? I don't know. But if they just have to join the Big Ten, they're just kind of like another Big Ten team, albeit they would be playing, at that point, the Big Ten would be basically a national league anyway.
How worried should the non-money makers in the power leagues be after this? Because this sets out a roadmap for big schools in the power leagues to get more money because they could just copy this in their next deals. And it sets apart the thing that I'm sure that every Vanderbilt and Rutgers and Minnesota and all that worry about anyway is when do they get to the point where they tell us we're in a different league now?
You know, it's hard to say. Obviously, it's something to keep an eye on because if you're Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State, you're looking at this going, if you're Rutgers, Rutgers got into the Big Ten because the Big Ten wanted to put the Big Ten network on basic cable channels and basically tax all the people who lived in the state of New Jersey, whether they were Rutgers fans or not, or college sports fans or not, to pay, $1 a house for the Big Ten network. It was a tax. That's what it was. That was the only reason. There was no reason to add Rutgers or Maryland other than they had a lot of cable homes in their state. Well, basic cable is decreasing in influence. The carriage fees are lowering. At what point are you no longer useful? And if you're Ohio State and Michigan, you're like, look at our games. We're the only ones. No one's watching Rutgers football unless they're playing Ohio State or Michigan or Penn State. You could see where someone say, hey, why don't we get more money? At what point do we change this? There is one thing, same with, Mississippi. Why do you have 2 teams in Mississippi? I hate these conversations. Why do you have them? Because it's awesome. That's why. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, who cares? I'm tired of television markets and revenue and because it creates there's a culture to the SEC or there's a culture to the Big Ten, but the Big Ten is now 18 teams big. It's all over the place. What is the Big Ten anymore? And that, I think, you risk the peeling off of some of the teams you brought in. There is something else to this, and that is, in the Big Ten, at least with some of the schools, I don't believe it's expanded to all 18, but certainly the older ones, there is also billions in research grants, in academic and science and all these different things that completely trump what football will bring in. And so there's incredible value in being involved in the Big Ten as an academic institution. And there are, I know we forget, but there are actual colleges right next to the stadium. It's amazing. There's more to this than just football. So that's a big part of it too. I don't know whether they'd be kicking people out. Imagine the lawsuits of that, but I wouldn't sleep totally easy, because you tell me why Ohio State should get the same share as Maryland. I don't know why. Just because.
If the conferences that those schools are a part of are not afraid to separate from others because they feel like they deserve more and they've earned it too, then one day it should not surprise anybody that teams within the conference that they've protected before might be looked at differently down the stretch. You would think that if you're a part of the original SEC, and I know Tulane was at one point, I'm not talking about that, but you would think that that's going to still mean something. But who knows, Dan? I mean, at any time, you might see people separate, or like FSU and Clemson, who we deserve more than NC State, Boston College, or somebody else.
Yeah. And I think one of the arguments is like, look, we're Florida State. We spend $175 million on athletics, and you're, one of those lower schools, and you spend $85 million. What are we doing? Why are we in this? I can't rule anything out anymore once a 108-year Pac-12 was taken apart. Like what? Like once that went, I guess that was and there was a million breaking points before that, but when that went, it was like, what exactly are we doing here? Like, what is going on? Just so we can have, the Big Ten has to have 4 teams in the West Coast. They could have done that with a scheduling agreement, and not destroyed the Pac-12 with Cal and Stanford and SMU in the Atlantic Coast Conference. It's like one bad move just begets another bad move and another bad. And it's just dominoes falling. At some point, it's like, can we just take the dominoes out? Are we going to get private equity in this? Like, everything is just done on a spreadsheet now. And I get, look, I've said this on the show. We've talked about I'm not preaching to the choir, but it's like, I get it doesn't make perfect business sense, but that's not a bug. That's the feature. If you love college sports, that's the part you like. I don't want to just sit there and watch 32 of the biggest brands. I can do that on Sunday. I want to watch all of this stuff. I look at games and say, this is an exciting game. It doesn't have to be the 2 biggest brands. I don't care about the brands. I care about the teams, the stories, whatever. If Ashton Genty that guy was an exciting player this year. So what if he's in Boise, Idaho? That's great. It's part of the charm of the whole thing. I want all of it, and that's what you just continually hope that the leaders of college sports are protecting what college sports really is, rather than just this chase for more money. And it's just like, who needs the money? Why is this not working? They cry poverty, but it's like you're paying $3 million for a defensive coordinator. Who made you do that? There's all sorts of ways that this doesn't have to. It's not like the sport is broke. It's not like no one's watching. It's extremely successful. It's never been more popular. It's never been more profitable. Why are we just keep squeezing and squeezing and squeezing to the point where all of a sudden Tobacco Road basketball is no longer a thing? Well, you know what? I'm not going to tell you I'm the biggest watch on every college basketball game out of Tobacco Road, but all of us like it, right?
Yeah.
That's what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important. It's important to the people there. It's important to the fabric of college sports. It's great. And, Duke, Carolina, NC State, Wake, we all know, let them play. And you hate to see, we got to lose that because we can get $5 million more dollars. Okay, what are we doing?
Dan, you're going to love Big 12 Duke versus SEC North Carolina and Las Vegas to tip off the 2020 whatever season here coming up.
Probably coming. It's probably coming. I don't know.
Yep.
I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, these games went out. I mean, you look at the Big 12 basketball. It's so awesome, right? And I even love the way I've always been pro NIL because I look at how there's this constant screaming, we need more money because of this and that. Like, you look at college basketball right now, all sorts of teams are winning that didn't win before. It's not, we used to have the blue bloods, right? And it was basically Nike and Adidas choosing where all the players went. And now we've got, Houston and Iowa State and, all these teams are good. Auburn, and it's a fresh blood in there. And I love that. And they would have told you that was all going to die. So we got to break up all these leagues because that's going to be impossible. And because it's only going to be the rich getting richer. And then you look on the field and you look on the court and you go, well, it's not the rich getting richer. It's no longer the top 10. Look at the top 10. This doesn't look like the top 10 years ago.
KU,
that's what I love.
Yeah, KU, North Carolina. Baylor's not a part of that blue blood, but recent national champion. UConn all dropped out of the top 25 as preseason top 10 this year at one point. That was an interesting part of the season. Dan, thank you very much as always. We appreciate your time whenever you can give it to us, and have a great rest of your week.
Always great to be on with you guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Phil Snow will join us in a minute. One of the things that he brought up, and remember this, let's say you are a part of the Big Ten or the SEC, and you're okay. I mean, you're a proud, great university, and you have AAU, or you have the endowments and all that. And if you're not good in a sport, yeah, but we have a high endowment. I don't care about that. I know you should if you're a president or board of trustee or an alum. I get all that. But and it's not going to go back to that. We're not going back to the Pac-12 being who they were for 100-plus years, or what was the Big Eight or the Southwest Conference or other conferences. Those days are shot.
But what we all agree with, and Dan said it, we said it before, and Craig was like, amen. It's like, stop bragging about your TV deal. You didn't do anything to earn that. Didn't at all, and most of the teams in these two leagues that have the big TV deal didn't do anything to earn it either, other than show up and get their ass beat by the teams that did get it.
Or happened to just be a part of the conference when it opened up,
Yeah, no, that's part of the tribalism. And I kind of felt that start to really turn a corner with the realignment a couple of years ago, where that became much more of a conference type of thing, whereas it was sort of the SEC, and we made fun of them for it, of the whole SEC all the time. And then after a while, you sort of get it, especially when you're talking about football or something along those lines. But then with all the realignment and the lines that were seemingly drawn of you die or I die, and it's all or nothing. And then that led to a bunch of people with numbers and charts and everything, illuminating people on, well, look at that, Florida State's got way more viewers than Boston College does, and then it turned into that. But yeah, ultimately it's turned into instead of just and what is the warning I give every time we talk about TV ratings? I'm not doing this for tribal purposes. I'm not doing this to say Team SEC or whatever. It's just, I think they're fun to look at. Hey, that game got 10 million viewers. That's pretty badass. But yeah, that and everything else that can draw a line of some tribalism of the conference is making this amount of money. I don't know. I don't know if it's an American thing of just the obsession with money that you have to obsess over it in every aspect of life or not. I don't know. But definitely a lot of this was brought out in the last few years with all of the just chaos of conferences ebbing and flowing and dying and living and everything else. I mean, Big 12 fans were never as proud of the conference as they were in the last 2 years when they started picking apart other schools. Mm-hmm. There was never this big, wide, Big 12, go Big 12. If there was, it was a K-State fan here and a Texas Tech fan there, and they wanted the conference, but nobody really embraced it because there was two at the top, money-wise, that it wasn't equal, and they always let you know it wasn't equal, and they let you know they weren't really even into it. Mm-hmm. And so it never really, it never had that kumbaya kind of like the SEC does. But since the TV deal, since the Pac died, or was mortally wounded, it's go Big 12. It's like that.
Yeah, there is much more of a brothers. I don't know what it's
which
called.
Is cool in some ways. It's also kind of what Dan's talking about as well, where it comes into fights about TV ratings and this and I just think that does kind of take too much precedent sometimes, and it's not really the point of why we all loved it to begin with. So there's a lot of that a lot of business stuff going on. Yeah.
We're 2-10 in football, 5-25 in basketball, but we are making more TV money than
$30 million more than you do. Yeah.
When we come back, Phil Snow, Nebraska's associate head coach and a great friend of the show. This is 365 Sports. They just had a Fat Tuesday event. Of course, that was last night at the Baylor Club. But just to let you know, man, they have these events. They're social now for anyone that's a part of a faculty at any of the local colleges. For example, McLennan College and or Baylor or elsewhere, they'll do that. But the Fat Tuesday that they just had was fantastic, including on the menu, the good things you'd want. Gumbo, jambalaya, etouffee, and so much more. There are private events constantly being lined up inside McLean Stadium at the Baylor Club, including the one we'll have in mid-May honoring 20 elite senior student athletes who are a part of the greater Central Texas area. Wednesday, today during lunch, they have salads and sandwiches and sides and entrees, for example, marinated flank steak or Texas chili. That was today. It will be, of course, yet more days coming up inside the Baylor Club. You can go to their Facebook page and find out what special is coming up next. But if you have an event, wedding, banquet, symposium, speaker, series, whatever it might be, they have plenty of room for you and great food, and they will take care of whatever group it is of 20 people or maybe 1,000 people. The Baylor Club, General Manager Mike Moso, tell them that you're a viewer of 365 Sports.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. Don Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
We had a segment, Phil Snow was in studio with us, and it was phenomenal. He is now in Lincoln, Nebraska, as an associate head coach under Matt Rhule at University of Nebraska Huskers football. He joins us now. on 365 Sports. And Phil, thank you very much. You and Matt have known each other a long, long time. You have coached for a long, long time, and he gets you back onto his staff again. What was that conversation like, and was that inevitable?
Well, it's good to talk to you, Smokey, again. He called me and introduced his proposal and stuff, and I thought about it, and I said, you know what, let's go try it for a year. So, and I'm glad I have. I'm having fun and dealing with young people again, trying to get them better at everything they do. So I'm having a good time.
So Tony White leaves, and that means that there could be a new scheme, all these other things. What is the focus on the defense right now? Is it building off of what was there and you guys have established, or is it installing maybe a new scheme?
Well, Coach Butler's got his own wrinkles. He's the defensive coordinator, John. And, but, they were and John was in the system last year, obviously, was here. And they did a lot of good things. And so, you're going to continue. He's going to continue to do those things. And then maybe get a little bit different on third down. John's got a good NFL background on third down. I do. We just hired a D-line coach from the Kansas City Chiefs. He does. So maybe we can implement some things on third down to attack protections and give people a few more problems. But and then obviously, you can always get better in the red zone. So we're working on that area. But a lot of the things that they did here on first and second down will still be implemented.
Coach, I know you probably, I assume you keep in pretty regular touch with Matt Rhule, but did you have any inkling of an idea when that phone rang or buzzed or whatever it did the day that offer came? Did you have any idea that offer was maybe around the corner and that coaching itch was still going to be there?
I did not. We had talked about 10 days before, and, we just talked football and stuff. So I didn't really, and then when he proposed it, I went to my wife and she was good with it. So we said, hey, let's try it. And, we love Julie and Matt. So, and there's a lot of coaches here on the staff that I'm familiar with. So, it was an easy transition to come here.
So you've been around a lot of places. I mean, all over the West Coast, obviously here in Texas, but when you thought of Lincoln, Nebraska, had you been there coaching before? Kind of what was your experience, and how have you sort of embraced all things Cornhusker so far?
Well, I had previous experience with them. I when we were in Arizona State, we played them 3 times. Mm-hmm. They beat the hell out of us twice, and we beat them once.
Yep.
So twice I played in this stadium here in Lincoln, and then they came to Arizona State. So, that was against Coach, and so Coach Osborne, and so I've always loved this program, and respected Coach Osborne as a young coach. I think all of us my age really respected. There were about 3 or 4 people in the business, and he was one of them. So, I've always admired Nebraska.
Phil, you mentioned third down. And I think last year Nebraska's defense was just outside the top 30 on third down defensive efficiency. Besides allowing points per game, which is a stat you want to be as low as possible, what is the number one defensive stat that matters the most other than points allowed?
Well, I think it's red zone defense. If people kick field goals in the red zone, you have a chance to then affect how many points you give up. And, third down's tied into that, too. You got to win third down in the red zone, right? So they kind of go hand in hand. But red zone is really important. I'll tell you how important it is. Bill Belichick at the Patriots, when they started camp every year, they started with the red zone package. That was the first day of install, was red zone. And it's a huge factor in playing great defense.
Phil Snow with us, associate head coach at Nebraska under Matt Rhule.
So how quick do you get in the lab and start watching film? And is it different because you have so much roster turnover now? Are you watching film more for scheme things, of things you can add, as opposed to personnel? Because, again, you could have 7 different guys on that side of the ball.
Yeah, here's the thing, though, I think is still valid, is that, everybody thinks that grass is greener on the other side, right? Everybody says, oh, these players are better than our players. Well, there's some good players here. So it still comes down to the development of the people that you bring in out of high school. And so, that's where I spend a lot of time watching tape of the people we currently have and how do we make them as good as they can be. Everybody wants to go out and get a Portland guy, but you know what? You may have somebody right on your campus that is better than that Portland guy, and you better recognize that and realize it and coach them and get them to play that way.
A lot of players leave, as you mentioned, because of the portal, and a lot of them you don't want them to leave. And what Tony White had done, John Butler had done, Nebraska could play some defense. Now, there was one game against Indiana that got out of control, and that was kind of shocking because they jumped on the Huskers quickly. But other than that, they have played pretty well. That's Matt's style, too. He wants to do that. Everyone wants to play good defense. But they have been missing something else. I know they have a new special teams coach now because that's been a mess. What do you think? Has Matt talked to you a little bit about what's actually been missing there in Lincoln?
Well, they even Scott Frost and Matt did the first 2 years. They've lost a lot of close football games.
Believe me,
yeah. There's a variety of different reasons for that, but the bottom line is they're just not playing well enough to win the close games, right? The other team is making plays when it counts, and we're not. So that's the bottom line. And so we've got to get to a level where when it's showtime, we make the plays to win the game. And you never know really when those plays are. So you've got to play 60 minutes. And Matt's implemented a lot of the things he believes in, and it's really starting to kick in. Like, we're doing Matt drills now in the off season, and it's pretty impressive to watch our guys go through this. Now, 2 years ago when they first came, it was a circus, right? It was bad. So they've really advanced in a lot of areas, and I think winning those close games will be one. And we've got a quarterback back that's a good player that is now going into a sophomore year that will help with that too. But there's a lot of factors, and I think this program is developing to overcome those issues.
Is it almost as if they've forgotten how to win?
Well, yeah, when you have a history of the same thing happening over and over, the first thing that comes into your mind when you get the tight ball game are those negative things. Again, it comes down to how well you play in big moments, and we've got to get that done.
So it's just about remembering the good times and and learning from the bad. Is that the basic nuts and bolts of it? Where if you get in those situations again, you can be like, okay, take a deep breath. It's going to be fine. We can win this game.
Well, I think Nick Saban used to say it all the time. It's the process. You don't think about, are you going to win this rep? What you think about is, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to believe in myself and what I've been taught, and I'm going to play this rep. And if you do that, trust your training and trust your ability, then good things happen to you. You can't have all those thoughts in your brain, good or bad. It's like we say, forget the next play or the last play. Whatever happened last play, forget that play, and now get back to who you are and just play the way you've been trained. And so that's what we have to do in big moments.
What is the difference? Phil Snow, associate head coach in Nebraska, with us on 365 Sports. Is there any difference in how Matt approaches what he's doing there compared to what he did at Temple, what he did in Waco? Is it the same type philosophy, or have you seen a couple of changes?
No, I tell you what, it's the same in a lot of areas, and you can really see the progress. The guy at Indiana screws it up for everybody, right? He goes in there and wins big the first year, right? But that's really atypical. I mean, you have to build a program and from the ground up, and he has done that, and a lot of things are starting to kick into place. So he has a system. Now, he's tweaked a few things, but he has a system that he believes in, and it works. And so it'll be fun to see this team play this year.
Did you and were you surprised? Obviously, you were with Matt at Carolina, the Panthers, and David Tepper and all that. That's another show one day. But when he's out there and then all of a sudden this job opens up, which no matter how they've struggled in the last decade or two, it's still a blue blood program. Were you surprised that's where he ended up, or did you think he could end up somewhere else?
No, it didn't surprise me that Nebraska would be on, on his ticker, right? But what did surprise me, I thought he might take a little time off, right? But boy, that's not Matt. I talked to him about it too, and he said, "Nope, I'm going." And he researched the hell out of this job now, and so this is something that he believed in, and that's why he took it.
You may not know this, Phil, but we've talked a lot. We've had you on a lot. We got a chance to visit with you a lot when you were here. But I'm a lifelong Nebraska fan. Matt actually texted me. This is not when it got serious, but about a week or two before it, that he texted me and he said something to the effect that, "So, hey, you think your guys are going to get it right this time?" And I didn't quite understand what he was asking me. And then about a day or two later, I went, huh. And then I started telling him what's been going on and what's wrong about this and that, like I'm a football guy or something, which I'm not. But he seems to fit there. Now, of course, he's always moved around, and that was something. I don't think Lincoln needs him to be moving around. And, of course, he needs to win to make sure that doesn't happen. But what is it like there in Lincoln, Nebraska, which they're desperate for something positive to happen?
Yeah, I think I think everybody's excited about, the trajectory of this football team. They went 7-6 last year, won the bowl game, and if you look at Matt's past history, that's about what he's done everywhere at Baylor, and so they're seeing the progress. The recruiting classes he's had, the portal he's had, so that they're seeing a lot of positive things. So I think they're excited about what Coach is doing in this program.
Why is it that climb, that ladder of 1 or 2 wins at Temple, 1 win at Baylor, and then next year they're above 500 in a bowl team, and then the third year they win 10-plus games or win a conference title or play for one? Why is it like that?
Well, I think what you can do is you can go into a program and try to Band-Aid it and win as many games as you can, or you can go into a program and build your systems. And so when the system is built and you've recruited the right guys, you take off. And it's not a Band-Aid fix. It's a system, and that's what Matt does. He comes in, he doesn't try to Band-Aid anything, and he puts in a system which he believes, and the longer it's established, the process and what he believes in, the more games he's going to win, and then he gets it going, and then it takes off.
Got one more question about the defense and how they played last year. And again, as a Nebraska fan, they had that huge game at home. Colorado the year before had embarrassed them in Boulder. Long-time rivalry, as you know. And early in the game, Nebraska led 7-0. And Shedeur, in his own end zone, threw a pass that Tommy Hill picked off and walked it into the end zone. And I got to tell you this. I got up and squealed like a 13-year-old girl when I saw that play, because I had not seen that play much at all. That was something that was missing. Not that they didn't have a play or two on occasion, but is that the kind of play that once you get that, it kind of becomes contagious?
Yeah, there's no question. They played great defense here the last 2 years. If you look at the statistics, they're in the top 20 in a lot of them, a lot of statistics. So Tony did a great job here. So, we have a lot of young guys in our front seven, so they're talented, but we've got to do some coaching. But and they call their defense here the black shirts, and they take a lot of pride in wearing those black shirts. It's a big deal here to play defense.
I haven't told Matt this, but I don't like them mentioning black shirts unless they really, truly earn it. Not just 1 week, but the next. I'm telling you, I want my philosophy. I need to talk to you guys about that, because they'll have a game, and they did play well defensively the last couple of years, but they're so thirsty for that, and those days are not long gone. You hope to reestablish those, but they can't wait to okay, you're a black shirt. And it just seemed like they almost do that too soon because they want it so badly.
Yeah, I have not been here through the process, right? So I'm going to have to see how it all unfolds.
I'll tell Matt that next time we have him on. Hey, all right,
So, Phil, let me tell you what he's trying to do.
Fly me up there. I need to come back up there.
You guys can put, there's no limits on staff, no, so you guys can put him on staff.
I can be an analyst.
And his only analyst role is, have you gotten your black shirt?
When is it
That's
time?
what he wants.
Yeah, when is it time to award the black shirt to certain players? Believe me, I bet most Nebraska fans would agree with me. Phil, the schedule in the college football landscape has changed dramatically even since the last time you were in it. And then, of course, you were part of the NFL, Chicago, whatever. But what do you think about what the schedule is going to be like maybe a year or two from now? And again, I don't know. You don't know how long you're going to be in Lincoln, but the spring game, not going to do it for reasons that they don't want to see people see your own players. But what about a pro style like OTA type? Maybe you even have something in June that normally would be during a time where you're not allowed to work with the players.
Well, Belichick, Bill, his son was the DC at Washington last year. So he spent some time there, and he couldn't believe the improvement in the players in spring football because they were in pads and actually playing football. OTAs, you're in pajamas running around, right? It's not football. And so I think it would hurt college football and the development of college players if they take away spring football. That's my opinion. So I believe that those 15 days really, especially the young players. Now, we're not done with the older ones. The older ones we give off, but the younger players need those 15 days. And so I think it would hurt college football.
How much are you involved on an everyday basis? Is it more hands-on? Will it be more of that along with John Butler and the rest of the staff? Is it as an analyst? Kind of, and I know it's more than that, but what is like what your everyday role is right now?
Well, I think so the head coaches in college football today have so many things going on. Smokey, you can't believe the amount of people that work in this building, the different jobs now that are in place that I don't even know the names of these jobs anymore, right? It's crazy. So the head coaches are drawn in a lot of different directions. And he said, Phil, I want you to come and make sure the football's right on the field, that we're playing to the standard that I want. And I know what Matt wants. So I know what he expects from the coaches, from the players. So that's my role here. My job is to make sure that the players and the coaches understand what type of football that we want at Nebraska. And so, I'm good with the coaches. And we sit down and say, hey, Matt wants this. So, that's what we do, right? So that's my role here.
You see now some of those players you had at Baylor when you were there with Matt and the Petries of the world and Terrell Bernards of the world that were a part of that team when you guys arrived during the transition. Were they that good when you first got there that you knew at some point that they were going to be who they are now in the NFL?
No, I would say no. When you looked at Petrie, he weighed 190 pounds. I would not have said initially that, and really, when he came out of high school, he didn't run like he ran when he went to the combine. He did a great job with his body, and he's a terrific human being and a worker. So he really made himself a football player, and he's really instinctive and smart, which helps him in a lot of things that he does. And then Terrell was, he wasn't very big.
Mm-hmm.
In both those guys for the National Football League, it's amazing what they're doing because both of them aren't big people. I just pray and hope they continue to stay healthy because, that game there's such big people hitting you. But I would say no early. Now, as we got to coach Terrell more and more because we left after his sophomore year, he had great instincts. He took over for Johnson at the Mike Backer and just fit right in, right? So you could see he had some stuff to him. And then obviously they did a great job with him the last 2 years, and he's, a starter in the National Football League. But it's really fun to see the progression of those two players.
I thought those two are most instinctive players I've seen. I'm sure there's others, but they were two of the most instinctive, fast, from A to B football players at the college level playing defense that I'd seen in a long, long time. I mean, it was almost like they were 1A and 1B, the way that they worked together, the way that defense was run. It was amazing. They're fun to watch. And you're right, they're not big, but my God, when they get there, they're coming with a lot. Paul, do you want to ask for a Dustin Pedroia autograph or anything from Phil?
How close are we to Dustin Pedroia, Phil?
I just talked to him last night.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I would give that guy a kidney if he needed it.
Well, what the hell do you want?
This is so unprofessional.
Yeah, no, it is. No,
I broached it, so it's okay.
Yeah, hey, just a lifelong Red Sox fan who thoroughly enjoyed his work.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I'm not going to ask for you to send me one of those Nebraska jackets you're wearing on the picture we're showing either. But no, we were there. Craig and Jennifer, Daniel and I were at the game against Illinois, which was a tough loss in overtime. But my God, what an experience that was. Matt set us up. We had a great time. That was so much fun. That was amazing. Hope to see you this season.
Yeah. Hey, nice talking to you, Smokey.
You too. You guys go have fun. Phil Snow, associate head coach at Nebraska, with us on 365 Sports. Like when he was in the studio, we tried to do it, and we were going to do it. And then Matt screwed it all up by hiring him. Mm-hmm. Phil Bennett and Phil Snow in the studio together.
Yeah, the fill-up is – we've already got one Phil to agree to it.
Yep.
And we don't have to do it. We can do it at Phil's pool.
In his backyard?
Yeah.
Absolutely. We can have it.
We get it done. Like, look, we don't have to put you in a cramped studio. We can put you in, over here while we're smoking a brisket.
We haven't had Phil on in too long. I love talking to Phil Bennett. Phil Snow, associate head coach at Nebraska. The eyes and ears now, kind of he's going to take on a role. John Butler was a part of the Bills. He was a part of that staff. Tony White did a great job with Nebraska's defense. But let me tell you something. That guy, Cignetti at Indiana, tore them up early and often in that game up in Bloomington during the 2024 football season. All right, we still have around the corner West Virginia and their 2025 football schedule. John Cooper, our last guide, thoughts about what he has the most on his mind after the NFL Combine. And John Wilner, what are Stanford and California thinking about the settlement between the ACC and also Florida State, Clemson, and the future? This is 365 Sports. So we're now into the early part of March, and how many of you, as the year ended or this year began, said, I'm going to get myself in shape, I'm going to get fit, I'm going to lose some inches, I'm going to lose some pounds, and now here we are, the first week in March, and did you do that? Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco. Personal trainers to help you reach your goals, and they know how to do that. Randall Corley, Christy London, Robin Nelson, Nathan Roach, and Lori Hull are there to help you. To get rid of that little extra that you have around your waist, or to just get fit. Cardio, strength, fitness. Why not now? Don't wait until, I'm going to get ready for the summer. Do that now so you can relax and enjoy the summer if you go to the beach, swimming pool, or just stay in shape or get in shape. Also, Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness has a bunch of tennis courts, including an 1,100-seat stadium court. They are resurfacing some of the tennis courts. Some of them are done. Some of them are being resurfaced now, and it is spectacular. Britt Coleman, Dixon, John, Holt, Clay, and Kenna all can help you out. And then Rachel Carter, director of pickleball, because pickleball is exploding, and they are ready for you with pickleball private lessons from Peter, Dixon, and also Jody. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness, tennis, fitness, pickleball, and more. Do it by yourself, do it with personal trainers, but do it. Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
Allen Samuels House of Travel is a full-service travel agency with highly experienced travel consultants plus support staff with over a combined 150 years in the travel business. They are ready to take care of any travel situation for you, your family, and your business, and with the kind of knowledge to complete a seamless itinerary trip start to finish. They will search for the best deal to accommodate your budget from air to cars, ship to shore, hotel, and even meeting space. Name a destination and they've been there. They know the places to go, and international and missionary travel is one of their unique specialties. Allen Samuels House of Travel, celebrating 50 years in business. Call Connie, Sherry, Linda, or Bambi at 254-776-2560 or find them on Facebook or at houseoftravelwaco.com. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Want to send a message to the show? Jump in the Rudy's Country Store and Barbecue chat room.
We will hear from John Cooper, our lad's guide to the NFL draft. The combine, of course, over. Now you start to have pro days. We'll be at Big 12, not media days, pro days sometime in mid-March up in Frisco at the Star. And, of course, teams having pro days on their campuses elsewhere, too. And then the draft coming up at the end of April. One college football note, Big Ten. Michigan and Maryland will play, Michigan State and Maryland will play at Ford Field to close out the season at the end of November.
That's
it's a random game.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I hate that it's not going to be on a home campus, but, I mean, Ford Field's a nice stadium and all. I don't know.
So that you would think if this is the case, most likely this was going to be at East Lansing. I'll look that up in a second. But East Lansing.
Yeah.
Okay, so Michigan State gives up a game at home.
Yeah, I really am starting to hate these neutral site games at NFL stadiums. I think college games should be played at college stadiums. The NFL has figured this out. The NFL games are played at NFL stadiums, and they play at home stadiums until the Super Bowl, which is a whole different thing.
But most conference championship games are at NFL stadiums, aren't they?
Yeah, I get that, but that's that should be a one-off. I guess I'm getting tired of this. I like the atmospheres on campus better.
Yeah, I think sometimes though there's stories like this, the devil's in the details.
Yeah.
So we're not Detroit residents. Yeah. We're not Michigan State fans. We look at this headline and we go oh, that's cool. But they've done this. They've done this twice in the last 3 years. This is also Thanksgiving weekend. It's also bookmarked with the Lions game and a high school football state championship. So all of that kind of plays into, I think, this decision and probably, getting some monetary value out of it as well. I'm with you, all of the NFL stadium action at this point, but and knowing some of the details, you can at least a little bit better understand it, because what happens during Thanksgiving week, guys?
Everyone leaves.
Everyone goes home, so they don't have big crowds. So give up the home game, go to Detroit, play at the NFL stadium, draw a big crowd, because they'll come out there because a lot of people live there. And so I think that's part of the thought process here as well is you can draw much bigger at the NFL stadium than when all of the students have gone home, and then you also have the ability to bookend it with high school and NFL, make it a whole, Thanksgiving weekend type of a thing. So, I think that's and just what I was reading earlier, kind of the thought process behind it, and not so much like, hey, it's a quick money grab. Although again, it's college sports, it's any sport, it's America, so like money's involved somewhere or another. But I don't love it, but I at least understand it in this case that it makes it a much bigger deal than it otherwise would be.
All right, Big 12 basketball, just a little nugget here and there. One, Baylor won at TCU. They needed a win. They were probably in the tournament, but my goodness, they were teetering. And it's 61-58, the final score. Yes. People had fun with that because of the 14 football game at McLean Stadium.
Yeah, I mean, that's odd that it worked out that way, but pretty cool. If you're a Baylor fan, that's a slogan almost now at this point. Like I'm surprised it's not like in the official school handbook that's one of like the things you say 500 times every year is 61-58 in regards to like a basketball score or whatever. But when it does get brought up, that score, like that's where I immediately go in my head is that freaking Baylor TCU game from years ago. Anytime I see that combination of numbers, and like, how could you not if you were involved in that? It was such a crazy game. It's still one of the best college football games, just pound for pound, craziest endings I've ever seen. And I've seen at this point a lot of games over at that stadium and elsewhere, and that's still right there at the very top of just, I mean, I remember like it was yesterday. I remember sitting in that booth thinking they're going to get blown out on national television. They're getting their ass whooped by their arch rival in the hunt for a national championship and a Big 12 title. Like it started off as the most abysmal feeling you could have as a Baylor fan, and at home too. And then over that last like hour or whatever actual like real time that comeback was just, it was unbelievable, man. It was it's fun to look back on and watching like 10 minutes on YouTube now, but I can still hear the call of, there's 101, and then Antoine Goodley's touchdown, and then Corey, it's just, that was an insane game. Luckily for TCU, like that one hurts, but for every time that somebody says 61-58, you just go like, well, here's the other 10 years surrounding that game when we went like 9-1 against you guys. So they got theirs certainly, but that's an outcome, that will always live in infamy or live in lore if you're a Baylor or a TCU fan, particularly a Baylor fan.
All right. Also,
a nice win by them last night. They desperately needed that. Yeah. They desperately needed that win.
They got them to 500 at least in the conference. They still have Houston this weekend. The last game, Houston, of course, has had a phenomenal year.
But
BYU.
I think that pretty much put them in the tournament, though.
They
needed to win that one game, and then they'll probably lose to Houston. Let's just go ahead and say that. And then whatever happens in the Big 12 tournament. But the disaster scenario would have been you lose to TCU, and then you lose to Houston. And then what do you have to do in the Big 12 tournament?
Won it out in the Big 12. Yeah.
Like, what would you have had to have done now if you had lost to TCU?
You got to win like 3 games.
Yeah.
You really do. And that's something they've not – Baylor has had one really good run in Kansas City.
Yeah, that's not where they strive or thrive.
It's not the national championship year. They were out early in Kansas City. So that's not their – it's not their favorite place to go and play games. It's never really been a thing, no matter what team and how elite they've been. And then like the 2 times that they've made the finals,
Missouri beat them.
And Kansas beat them. Yeah,
and then, of course, then you hear about why is the tournament always in Kansas City? It should be. I don't want it to ever leave Kansas City.
Did something happen today involving that? Because I saw like Twitter just forces you to get sometimes this stuff just appears. But saw a whole to-do in this argument. I feel like I thought like my Twitter had gone back like 6 months of Las Vegas and that being a topic once again.
I guess they had to cancel like some event because of the weather today. That was up there because the women's tournament is
in Kansas City.
So they had to cancel some kind of event because of the weather. And so then all the people said in Vegas, well, we don't have that problem in Vegas. Yeah. You never have to cancel.
So then Utah fans were probably like, this is why it should be. Okay, yeah, well, that's the same conversation that's been gone on for now. Even before those teams entered, that was a conversation was, why is it always in Kansas City? That's unfair for Kansas and Kansas State and Iowa State to have the close proximity. But, dude, we went to Dallas, and that was not the best experience. Dallas is definitely not it in terms of a basketball site. But Las Vegas, I mean, I could see the case made, but I ran into a whole thread of people arguing about it. It's the same argument it was 6 months ago and 2 years before that and 10 years before that. But I was curious if something new had happened there, so that makes sense.
We got a break for our next guest, which is John Cooper. Then we have Wilner at the 5 o'clock hour.
You would never move it from Kansas City? Is that what you said?
I don't think if they did it on a one-off somewhere, maybe. I love it in Kansas City. I know Vegas could be an option or whatever with your mark or whatever. New York, because of his ties up there. I think Kansas City does an incredible job. And, yes, there are schools that are closer to Kansas City, just like there are schools closer to Arlington where they play the football championship game. So that's my take on it. Real quickly, BYU has now won 7 straight. West Virginia, K-State when they were playing well, Kansas, Arizona, Arizona State, West Virginia again, and they won in double overtime, had a 21 or 20-something point lead and blew it, and then beat Iowa State in Ames in overtime. That's a great win for Coach Young and the Cougars.
Yes, an incredible streak that they're on right now. They're playing really good basketball, fun team to follow, and obviously just getting started with Kevin Young.
Can we go straight to John? Do you want to do that, Paul?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, we got him on? Oh, okay, let's break. We'll come back with John Cooper, Our Lad's Guide to the NFL Draft, and this is 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco, and, of course, a new month in March, and yet it's always Trucks Month. It's always Truck Month. And I'm telling you, man, 7-time Ram Trucks Motor Trend Truck of the Year Award. 7 times, including the most recent, of course, with that as well. Ford, Buick, whatever brand you want when it comes to what they have, Chevrolet, Ram Truck, 7-time Motor Trend Truck of the Year. And you can find them. You can find some of the other brands, the pre-owned department. They have cars, trucks, and SUVs at Alan Samuels that are always a bunch. That's where I bought mine back in 2020 in May. In fact, just a little bit after we started this show on 365 Sports and YouTube. It's Alan Samuels, General Manager and CEO. Ted Teague is the man who you get to. David Gray, new car manager and sales. Alan Samuels, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
Automatic Chef is your local vending, office coffee, and micro market provider, delivering outstanding service to break rooms all over Central Texas for over 50 years. Automatic Chef brings the best products to your location at the best prices. With hundreds of choices in fresh food, coffee, snacks, and drinks, let Automatic Chef tailor a break room solution to your needs. Make break time great again with Automatic Chef. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchef.com.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Penny Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
This is 365 Sports. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
John Cooper, Our Lad's Guide to the NFL Draft. We didn't have him last week. It was kind of a busy week, the NFL Combine going on in Indianapolis. And so we have looked at it. We've had some of the stats, et cetera, some of the comments, whatever, John. Was there anything in particular, 2, 3, 4 different notes that you thought were the biggest, I guess, bullet points from Indianapolis?
Well, the way we look at it, they're running around in underwear. So, it's in football pads. They're not so you got to take everything with a grain of salt. Quarterback performances is what everybody seems to be, thinking about. I guess Quinn Ewers struggled a little bit. Jackson Dart looked very good. So, those are some interesting things, that came out of that, from what I understand, in terms of, what they did. Some guys didn't work out, but some of the measurements are concerning to some people in terms of Will Campbell, the big tackle. His wingspan, arm length is a concern for a left tackle. I'm not sure that's going to drop him. He's an awfully good player, but that's something that, people are talking about. One of the things that we look at is what we call wingspan differential. And so you take your actual wingspan and then subtract the height from that, and you come up with a differential. And we think that sometimes overcomes, at least statistically with the metrics, maybe that slightly shorter arms that some of these linebackers are showing up with, like Chris Paul Jr. And a couple other guys, that you could say that about. Mason Graham was another one, the big defensive tackle, +3 wingspan differential, even though his arms are a little bit less than ideal for that. But the way we look at it is, hey, watch him play, turn on the tape, and you see a great player there. So let's not take too much away from the combine and the measurements and some of the things. It's a great football player.
John, was there an issue with the measurements, like not lining up from a few weeks prior, and kind of like how big of a snag or a snafu is that? And obviously these measurements matter, but that was just something that I caught in looking around over the weekend.
Well, I know the one that comes to mind is Jalen Milroe, who had a less than 9 hand size. I looked at the quarterbacks, and everybody had at least a 9. And I know there's some years ago, I remember we were sitting at the Senior Bowl with an NFL head coach, and Dan Shanka was with us, and Dan would say, this kid can really play. We really like him. We had him at the Shrine Bowl. And the coach said, how big is his hands? And he said, well, he's only an 8 3/4. He's a reject for us. So it's ironic that Jalen Milroe's 8 3/4 or whatever it was, hand size went up to a 9 on 3/8 or whatever it was, at the combine. So I'm not sure, what the deal is with that. But, who was right, who's wrong. You would hope the combine gets it right because everybody's there. So yeah, I'll go with what the combine said.
Okay, Dan, after the John, okay. You're talking about Shanka there for a second. John, who is QB3 in your mind after the combine?
Had to ask me that, didn't you?
I did. I've heard all this Tyler Shuck stuff, and good for him, but he's made out of paper mache. So would worry me if I was going to pick him.
Well, I'm going to defer to, and we're going to have a conversation tomorrow. As the guy who does quarterbacks for us, I cross-check it. And right now, his feeling is that Jackson Dart would be the third quarterback from Mississippi. And after that, he feels there's a pretty good drop-off. And we haven't determined that yet. We're going to watch some film together, and we're going to try to talk through it and just see, where we're at. But right now, if Jackson Dart is probably the guy. Will Howard, I guess, did not throw very well, but I'm not concerned about that. He's been kind of hot and cold, anyway. And I think it's going to be up to the team that really wants a player. They like his size, they like his mechanics, they like the way he throws the ball. His production may not have been what they're looking for, but they may feel that we get him in our building, we can work with this kid. And that's going to determine where a lot of these quarterbacks are going to go. You're going to see a lot of them go, I think, in the mid rounds, 3rd through 6, through 3 through 5. I think that's where you're going to see a lot of these quarterbacks go off the board after the first 2, maybe 3.
John Cooper with us, 365 Sports. You're right. They're in a bunch of underwear and T-shirts or whatever else. We had RG3 on the show Friday, and he talked about many things. We brought up the 40, and he said that what we didn't know is that that by the time they get to the 40, you could be flat out worn out with all of that goes on even before you get to that point. That he kind of described all of that, the wear and tear mentally, physically. I did not know that, and I guess you give us your background on that.
Well, my experience with that, I've done some work, in scouting, part-time work years ago, with one of the NFL combines. What Dan was working with national scouting. Dan and I have been friends for a long, long time. And I've been through the combine experience with him while he was working with the combine when he was with national back in the 90s. And the thing that I remember, actually the 80s and 90s. But the thing that I remember about it was these guys are constantly on the go. There's one combine scout assigned to them, and they take their group throughout the entire week. They take them to the physicals. They take them to the interview rooms. They take them to they're with them everywhere. And the workouts, making sure they're on time where they're supposed to be, their meals, and their time is filled up. There's no time for for any leisure at all. It's a very, very hectic, busy time where, these guys are at a job interview. Basically, they're interviewing for a job. So they want to make a good impression, not only on the field, but off the field. And that's part of where the combine scouts are there to kind of direct them. So, yeah, it's definitely an intense experience for those players.
Did anybody you guys grinded the film so much, so I know the combine either maybe confirms or maybe brings something up to you. Did anybody after the combine change your mind about where they should be?
Well, not yet. We haven't really digested everything just yet. We've got this big database of players and, 300 plus players at the combine that we're going through with the speeds, and we do a little analysis of the combine workouts. That we have a guy that is into the computer, the metrics and things like that, and he takes all the results and he puts them into a what we call the OSR, our lad's secret recipe, or our lad's statistical whatever we call it. But anyway, and so that we like that, and we think it's very good at predicting. It's better at predicting failure than it is success. Let's put it that way. I don't know if that makes sense. But we haven't necessarily seen anything yet that kills us, except we're a little concerned about some of the length on some of the guys, the speed of some of the guys. But we were expecting some of that because we have access to their GPS speeds, and that is really more important than, based on what you just what you guys were just saying. These guys go through it, and the 40 time is it can be a mixed experience as far as how well it measures how fast they really can play the game. And so these GPS speeds that are out there now are probably more important when they're playing the game. They're how many miles per hour are they moving? When they're chasing, if they're a linebacker, what's their deceleration rate, their acceleration rate if they're a receiver. All those things are measured, and a lot of NFL programs now are looking much more at those than they are the 40 time, the shuttle, and all those other things. And the combine is still one piece of the puzzle, but those GPS, those metrics that are coming out now are, for some people, a lot more important. And I know some coaching staffs, one in particular, that they don't go to the combine anymore. They just use those. Their scouts go, the GM goes for the interviews, but the coaches stay home.
John, we've asked you a lot about individual prospects and kind of danced around the Big 12 a bit, since that's what we talk about a lot of times. I don't think I've ever asked you, though, about the Iowa State guys, and they have a couple of good receivers there in Jaden Higgins and Jalen Knoll. I think cornerback Darian Porter, also a guy as well that's getting some attention. Any thoughts on the Iowa State Cyclones and in particular those receivers and also Darian Porter?
Well, I just got done watching Porter a little while ago, and I'm really, really high on him. Obviously, he ran, and I'll be honest, there's one that I'm glad you mentioned it, because he ran better than we expected. But his playing speed is very good. He's 6'2", 195 pounds, and after watching the tape, he's moved up on my board a little bit. I've watched some early games, but now that I've had a chance to see some of the late season stuff and have a lot of games under my belt with him, I'm really high on him, and so that's a great one there. Noel, I think he's also jumped up on our board. He had a great performance, but you look at the film, and he's a good football player, and the combine, as you said, confirms that 4.3940 that he posted, that vertical jump that he did, that confirms that this is a great athlete that can play. And he can change directions. Yeah, he's only 5'10", and that concerns us a little bit, but he's still a really good football player. Zay Flowers was a first-round pick, and he was a smaller guy, and he's been an explosive player in the NFL. And Jalen Knowles probably a little bit bigger. Jaden Higgins, another one. Really, did a nice job. He's just the opposite type of receiver. He's 6'4", and he still ran 4.47. And hit 39 inches in the vertical. I've got it in front of me. So, yeah, you've got three really good players. In fact, Iowa State's prospects probably, if you say who helped themselves the most as a group, those guys are it.
John, there was a lot of buzz about Jacob Parrish from Kansas State, the defensive back. And I mean, obviously in his measurables, that was all really good. But I flipped on some highlights of him this week, and he's a dude where, while he's not like a big guy, I think he's going to help somebody. He's not afraid to put his nose in it no matter what. He's a really good tackler.
Yeah, I like him. I like him a lot. He's another guy I watched this past week, finished up and did my report on him. And he's a solid player. He's going to help somebody. You're definitely right. He can play. He's quick. He can tackle, and he can cover. He does a lot of things well.
John, there's certain players that can give off this arrogance or whatever, and Shedeur Sanders, of course, has been on the kind of on the radar. I knew that was just a matter of time someone would look at that or what he said or whatever. He's confident. He's pretty good. I don't know if he's a first-round talent or a third-round talent. But do GMs and they get turned off by someone like that, or do they kind of like that type of edge at quarterback?
I think it depends on who you ask. I'm kind of old school about that kind of thing. Teddy Roosevelt, walk softly and carry a big stick. But there's a certain amount of confidence that I think a player has to have in order to be successful. Whether it's a quiet confidence or whether it's something that's being said, that's up to the individual. And I think some teams like that. Some coaches like that. But I can tell you right now, I know some that don't. That would bother them. So the bottom line is how they perform on the field. We've had some guys that have, like to talk and have been great players and did everything that was asked of them. So as long as Shedeur Sanders or any of those guys does what they're asked to do and they're good teammates, what they say doesn't matter all that much.
John Cooper with his Hourglass Guide to the NFL Draft. John, thank you very much. We'll try to get back on the Wednesday rotation if that's okay next week.
Sure.
Thank you. The Combine's over, and 5 or 6 weeks until the NFL Draft at the end of April. We'll have plenty of that, and even some of the prospects who will join us on the show. John Wilner, the Wilner Hotline, joins us on 365 Sports. John, great to see you. We appreciate it, and we know you need to get off at 3:20 your time. So, in your opinion, with Stanford and Cal joining the ACC in the first year, and then all of a sudden you have this revamp type revenue sharing or whatever they're going to do, incentive based. Was this good news for Stanford and Cal? Does it strengthen their position in the ACC? In your opinion, what does that mean?
Well, I don't think it strengthens their position. The degree to which it weakens their position is a little bit uncertain. You know, they have a unique situation. They were desperate in the summer of 2023, so they took reduced revenue from the Big 12, right? Mm-hmm. They are receiving 33% of the ACC's revenue for 7 years, and then it ladders up to, I think, 70 and 75%. And then the final 3 years of the contract, they're 100%. So they're already taking a huge cut. I don't know that the way the ACC is going to distribute the revenue, with part of it based on TV ratings and the Success Initiative, I don't know that they stand to lose that much because they were already getting much less. So they had a bad deal that has a little bit of limited downside risk. But certainly it's going to help. The way the ACC set this up is it's going to help Clemson, Florida State, Miami, maybe North Carolina. And those programs are going to have a better chance to excel, which kind of naturally in a zero-sum game would hurt everybody else, including the Bay Area schools.
So what's their plan to get better at football? I mean, so that this, this is where it comes down to. How do Stanford and Cal, in particular, reassess their commitment or enforce their commitment to football that appears from the outside looking in to have waned over the last decade or so?
Yeah, for sure it has. Both schools have got new leadership. So Stanford's got a new president, Cal's got a new chancellor. My understanding is that both of them understand this is a tipping point moment for their athletic departments, against the broader landscape of where college sports is headed with revenue sharing. And in particular, it's going to be important to win in football. Look, Stanford is like BYU. It's all a matter of willpower because they have more than enough money if they want to compete at the highest level. Stanford's campus budget's like $7 billion, right? I mean, a rounding error could fund their athletic department for years on end. Cal's in a little bit of a different situation because it's a public school. The funding situation has more limitations, but both of them, I think, if there is the willpower, could succeed in the ACC. I mean, they're not in the Big Ten or the SEC, right? I mean, there's room to move. I don't know if they can get to the top, but there's certainly plenty of room to move up into the upper portion of the ACC, right? It's not loaded with football powerhouses, and we'll see what the commitment level is for both schools in the next couple of years. I think the fact that Stanford has hired Andrew Luck as the football GM, and that Cal is likely to hire Ron Rivera as their football GM, speaks to the fact that the president and chancellor are interested in winning.
John, I was curious. I know you've written before about like all the travel distances when all this was occurring over the last couple years, and granted, there's charter flights, so it's not like they're in the back of a crowded plane all of the time traveling cross country. But what's kind of the feedback you received from those at Cal and Stanford about what this year has been like in terms of all of the cross country, the scheduling changes and everything that's come with that, and just fan interest in, hey, you're no longer playing Oregon, you're playing North Carolina State? Yeah, the fan interest has not been great. In terms of the travel, I don't think Cal and Stanford are in that much of a different situation than USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington, to be honest. Right. Because it's all time zones, body clocks, air miles logged, and for all six of the schools, it's been really hard. And you've seen both the basketball coaches at USC and UCLA complain publicly about the situation. Mm-hmm. In football, there was a lot of, I don't think it was frustration with the situation because everybody knew what they were getting into, but certainly 9 a.m. kickoffs in the Eastern time zone did not work out very well for these schools. And it's not going to change, right? So it's kind of you got to learn to live with it, but you could just look at the wins and losses, and it is taking a toll on both major sports. And it's also, this piece has gotten lost. For basketball, it's not just when
Stanford plays at North Carolina or UCLA plays at Northwestern, they also then sometimes are at a disadvantage when they come home, because they come home and their conference opponent that they're then playing on the West Coast has been sitting out here for a couple days because it just played the geographic rival. You know, Nebraska plays USC and is sitting in LA for 4 days. UCLA comes home from an Eastern trip and has to play the Cornhuskers. So it's a disadvantage in some ways coming home too. And that is something that I don't think the schools kind of planned on, so to speak. So overall, it has been as hard as people thought it would be, and there's not much they can do about it.
Yeah, I saw where Mick Cronin, he was talking about that at UCLA, but I saw a story as well, and I forgot who it was. It may have been softball, volleyball, where they had to travel to Florida, and then they made it a road trip. You know, they were there for maybe 3 or 4 days on a Friday through a Tuesday or Wednesday. They knew this was coming, and there were some that were barking about it, and yet it's like everyone knew this might be a factor, and yet here they are.
Yet here they are. I know they still did it, and which is why when they complain, and I'll, to the credit, I have not heard anybody at Washington, Oregon, Stanford, or Cal complain publicly. None of the coaches. It's only been at USC and UCLA, the two schools that started the whole thing, right? They knew exactly what they were getting into. They did it anyhow, and it's playing out just like everyone thought it would. And here's what we don't know what the postseason is going to be like for these basketball teams, right? UCLA just played, I want to say it was Illinois and Northwestern. So they were in the Midwest for 5 or 6 days, come home for a single game against USC. Then they got to turn around and go back to the Big Ten tournament in Indianapolis. So we still haven't seen what impact this is all going to have on, you know, fatigue level, leg energy in the postseason. And that it could be even more difficult in that situation if these schools get shipped to NCAA tournament sites in the East. It's exactly what everybody thought it would be, and they still did it.
John Wilner with us, the Wilner Hotline, Paul.
It is very strange to me how, I mean, and people brought this up the whole time, John, about, look, for football, cry me a river, right? It's 1 day a week that you're going to have to go to these places. And while those are long flights, you know, it's 1 day a week. But in these other ones, it just was completely ignored by the powers that be in all this, wasn't it? Like this, hey, you know, well, we play more than once a week. We're on planes more than once a week a lot of the time. It's just like, oh, yeah, but, you know, planes are really fast now. Like that seemed to be kind of the response they got.
I think that I don't know that they ignored it so much as they hoped that it wouldn't be as big a deal as everybody thought it would be. The football situation is in some ways a little bit more palatable because, what is it? It's 3 trips east. It's 2 nights sometimes. You're chartering, right? A lot of the sports, the Olympic sports out here aren't chartering even. And that's even more difficult. But the issue with football is the 9 a.m. kickoffs, right? And the Big Ten has got a lot of them. And that is the piece that they really can't, you know, figure a way around. Whether it's the big noon game itself or a 9 a.m. game Pacific on the Big Ten network. And you just look at a lot of the scores of those games. And Stanford and Cal had some trouble too in ACC games or early kickoffs. They just got butchered. And I just don't know that that's going to change because of the Big Ten's TV contract, right? I mean, Fox isn't going to change Big Noon because UCLA's got to get up early. So there's no way around it. But that's the one piece in football that you don't have as much in basketball. There's not that many 9 a.m. tip-offs in the Eastern and Central time zones.
So, John, I'm sure you got questions from Cal, Stanford, whoever, folks packed Oregon State, Washington State of like, hey, does this open the door for them to be welcomed back here in a few years? How do you respond to that at this point, knowing that there's so many uncertainties that are in play? But do you feel like for those that dream of the old pack in some form or fashion that, you know, maybe this is a pathway back to at least putting part of that back together?
You mean the ACC settlement terms?
Yes.
Yeah. I think that the ACC settlement, the big thing is when the grant of rights and exit fees drop in 2030, it kind of has moved the window for another restructuring up from where it was. To me, it makes the most sense. It's not just for the ACC or the Big Ten. Regional conferences for the Olympic sports and for men's and women's basketball make far more sense for the athletes and the fans than anything else, right? Football, different beast. It still could regionalize, right? We're not sure how many schools are going to be able to opt into revenue sharing on a consistent basis. I think that's the thing that we have to let play out for a few years is how many of the schools in the Power Four are really in it for the long haul at full rev share. But for the Olympic sports, it doesn't make any sense to do anything other than regional conferences. I don't know if the Pac-12 would reform in men's and women's basketball in the same shape it was. But certainly, if you're just looking at it for the standpoint of the student athletes, it makes way more sense for that to happen. And the ACC settlement moves up the timeline, I think, where it possibly could happen, because it certainly seems like 2030 to 2032, right, is when we could see another shakeout.
I spoke with a writer who covers SMU, Billy Embody, and I asked him, I said, so what is the mood today on the campus at SMU? This is after the settlement, the news with Clemson, Florida State, and the ACC. He goes, well, it could be better. And, of course, they're happy as hell. SMU's thrilled about where they are and what they've done. But he said, at least it's not in the next couple of years. It's 5 years, and everybody has a chance to react to make sure they're in a better spot no matter what the future holds. Is that the same thing Cal and Stanford feel like?
I think so. It's basically, it gives everybody a chance to audition over the next 5 years, right? And somebody told me, if you can get 5 or 6 years of stability in the current environment, that's a win. So I kind of feel like Florida State and Clemson were big winners in this settlement, but everyone else in the ACC was a winner in that they have stability. They know exactly what the time frame is. They know exactly what it takes financially because of the assuming the House settlement is approved in early April. And so they, for whether it's Cal or Stanford or Syracuse or Boston College or Pitt or Wake, SMU, North Carolina, everybody knows what it takes. And you got 5 years to audition to see if you can get yourself to a position where either you join a 24-team Big Ten, 24-team SEC, or you join a 48 or 60-team Super League, whatever shape that takes, you got a chance to audition now for 5 years.
Yep. John, I know you've got some duties here pretty soon. Paul, you anything else?
Okay, so if you had to guess, Florida State, Clemson, Miami, North Carolina, in 2030, are they ACC conference teams?
I think in 2030 they're still in the ACC. Do I think by 2033 that they will still be in the ACC? No, I don't. It could be a deal like what we saw with Texas and Oklahoma, right? Where it's announced, 3 years?
Yeah.
3-year runway?
Yep.
And then they actually make the shift. But I think in the 2030, 31 range is when the decisions will be made, whether the changeover actually takes place. Then I'm not quite sure. I would bet it'd take a couple of years, but it's certainly not going to be, in my opinion, SEC's deal ends in the summer of 2034. By then, everybody's going to be in their new leagues.
John, you're the wizard out west, and we appreciate your time. And while we have you, since I don't know when we'll talk to you again, I wanted to at least ask you about the Pac-12 and the Mountain West and the move at least to intermediation and just kind of how would you sort of summarize where you think we are right now with that whole situation?
Well, they haven't decided for mediation yet. I think that might happen. None of the university presidents, we saw this in the ACC, right? University presidents never want to go to court. They do not want discovery. And it's the same thing out here. My guess is that they will settle. And a settlement is bad for the Mountain West, I think, because they have promised UNLV and Air Force $20-something million based on what they were expecting to get from the Pac-12 and the poaching penalty and from the 5 departing schools with their exit fees. And if there's a settlement, it stands to reason that UNLV and Air Force aren't going to get what they were promised. Does that mean they're going to up and leave? It doesn't, but it certainly adds an element of uncertainty to the Mountain West future. It's with realignment, it's never done until it's done. And even though the Mountain West has made a lot of plans and they got UTEP and Northern Illinois, the whole thing is not settled yet. I think we will have a better idea in the next, say, 60 days because of the mediation potential. So maybe by May 1st, mid-May, we'll have a decent idea what that's going to look like.
Appreciate your opinion, feedback, and also the insight, knowledge from the west part of the country, although you do cover the rest of the country too. John, thanks for your time, man.
It's all interconnected. Thanks a lot, guys.
Yes, it is. My God, yes, it is. John Wilner, the Wilner Hotline, who was a huge part of covering the Pac-12, still is, with right now who they are and who they're about to be. And then think about him. He's covering the Pac-12, but now started adding the Big 12 because of Colorado and Utah, Arizona and Arizona State, the Big 10 because of Washington, Oregon, UCLA and USC, and the ACC because of Stanford and Cal. I mean, that all of a sudden just blew up on him, and he does a great job with the Wilner Hotline.
Yeah, he does, and good to have him on, and good to get his thoughts on a variety of different topics, especially those that are closer to home and more of his pocket of knowledge, like the Mountain West Pac stuff and just the feelings of Cal, Stanford. I think about them like that's rough, man.
I agree. Yeah,
I think you'll be fine ultimately, but depends on your definition of fine.
Well, like he said that Stanford can do what they want,
right?
Like Stanford is a matter of will, as where Cal has to figure it out. And if you tell me a big school that ultimately in 5-6 years, like even if they opt in and all that, if you ask the powers that will still be running that school, it's not going to have some kind of big cultural shift where they're going to stop being, kind of this academic first, and not that other schools aren't, but that where, sports matter as much as they do, say, at a place like Texas. If you had to tell me to pick a university, a big-time university, that just in 5 years said, you know what, guys, this is just not the culture here. This just is not what we want to do. We'll have athletics. We'll do our best, but, there's no path forward for us to be successful in the way that it stands right now because we just don't have the want to. And, the map to us is really crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think we got to see how everybody digests that. I think to try and predict what everybody's going to be like in 5 years is pretty impossible because of the House settlement, the theories that there will be schools who do that for a couple years and then go, yeah, this is we can't keep doing it. This is not sustainable. We can't ask for money like this every year or muster up the money every year. So either we're just going to compete at a different level where we're paying way less money than everybody else and probably getting your head kicked in as a result of that, or you're not going to be a part of that grouping any longer because it's just not what you want your sports department to be. So there will be some of those. Now, it won't likely be – it's not going to be Oklahoma State. It's not going to be, most of the quote-unquote power schools. But I do think there will be some collateral damage as far as that goes. And, yeah, I mean, who the heck knows what happens in 5 years from now. But I think yesterday, just another reminder, if you hadn't had one in a while, of the sport's changing, the whole setup is changing, and you better have your ducks in a row and be ready to pivot and move and do what's best for your school, or you're going to be left, empty-handed and potentially in a very dangerous spot as an athletics department or as a university if you're not careful.
West Virginia schedule around the corner. It'll be the last of the 16 teams in the Big 12 where we have looked at their schedule, not so much as an X and O's, an analysis type of who they're playing and kind of the breakdown of the segments, including what before or after a bye. We'll do that here momentarily. But Dan, want to bring up a couple of things that Dan says, please tell me why you people are so concerned about the ACC. Why are you constantly talking about them? I know of no one in the ACC who's concerned about the Big 12. And he also said that all we do is talk 98% negative about the ACC, and the other 2%, I guess, is just blabber. Dan, we are a college football podcast, and what's your alma mater?
I went to an ACC school.
Yeah.
Look, also, you people.
Yeah, dude, that immediately tipped me off to the kind of dude you are.
Yeah,
so
Ross Perot lost an election because
you people. Like, come on, buddy.
I just wanted
that already summarized Dan to me. I mean, that tells me all I need to know. But, like, dude, we're going to talk about whatever the hell we want to talk about. It's our show. So you either like it or you don't. That's fine. Plenty of people do and don't. But I don't know where you think you're going to sit out here and, like, police our topics as though that's your job. And it's, I don't know, the biggest story in college sports over the last 24 hours. So doing a college sports show, it makes sense to talk about something that could have seismic ramifications. And I think you must have us confused because we don't talk about the ACC daily. We don't even talk about them weekly. But when there's a major story involving them that could have an effect on the Big 12, on the SEC, on the whole landscape, we're going to talk about it. It's just bizarre to me that you can't understand that. That's the crazy thing to me. I don't know what to tell you, pal. But people like you, I don't know. I just think you are looking to be angry or something. I don't get it. But the you people thing, I mean, like I said, you told me all I needed to know about you when you said that.
Look, bottom line, like, it is. He also hit on one of my big sports media pet peeves of when we were at the radio station, we would get calls and be like, why are you guys talking about this? They're not talking about this in Austin. Well, I'm not worried about what they're talking about in Austin. I'm worried about doing the best show that I can do based on, and if I'm not interested in something, it's not going to come across well in the air. So we're going to talk about things that are interesting to us. If that's not interesting to you, YouTube has a bunch of stuff. So go watch it.
Let's just stop giving it attention before it comes back to like, why are you triggered? And that like I already know the formula.
He's already done that. Yeah.
I already know the formula. Yeah. Oh, has he already? See, I told you. I told you. There's a lot of ACC, sunshine pumping podcasts. Go check those out, pal.
Yeah. The ACC network. We don't have one in the Big 12. We're not the Big 12, but. Dan, thank you very much. Appreciate your time, and also thank you for watching 365 Sports. When we come back, West Virginia, new coach in Rich Rodriguez, a lot of changes. After Neil Brown was out, he's now in Austin with UT. What about West Virginia's schedule? This is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they got great deals going on right now. It's time to love your car, truck, and SUV at the Love Your Truck Savings Event that's been going on now. All 2024 cars and trucks priced to move. You can save $9,000 on all 2024 Sierra, SLT, and SLE models in stock. So you're looking to get into a new Sierra truck. They've got nearly $10,000 in savings to help you get that goal accomplished. Also, qualified non-GM owners can save $4,500 on a new 2025 Buick Encore GX. You can save $3,000 on a Buick Enclave as well. So plenty of offers over on the lot right now and plenty of savings at the Love Your Truck Savings Event. Car and Driver's Editor's Choice, another offering from the Buick lineup. You've got the Invista. I already mentioned the Encore and the Enclave. Well, the all-new Buick Invista's in stock right now starting under $24,795. So plenty to choose from. Even more than I just mentioned there in the last 30 seconds. Give them a call. Go by the dealership, or you can visit the website, Richard Carr. That's KARR.com. Locally owned, locally run, and a part of the community for over 40 years. Do business in Central Texas with a dealership that gives back to the local community. Deal with people you can count on over at Richard Carr, Buick, GMC, Cadillac.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student-athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student-athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student-athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student-athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is 365 Sports. Check out the 365 Sports family of channels on YouTube.
We began this kind of a series, I guess you could say, every day for the last 16 shows. Craig's idea of looking at each of the Big 12 schedules that were released the Tuesday of Super Bowl week while we were in New Orleans. And we're down to the final team. I've got an idea, too, about what we'll do to extend like a series at some point on history of the schools in the ACC. Not things we've already discussed before, but certain things we can do to kind of track back to the history of teams inside the Big 12. And we're going to go to the ACC next week, of course. We will start the 17 consecutive shows with the ACC.
Oh, that'll make somebody happy. That'll make somebody.
So we have Dan for another 17 shows.
We're going to talk about him for 17 more shows. I cannot wait.
Yeah.
Because we're obsessed.
Yep, we can. All right. So Craig Smoak, West Virginia, the Mountaineers, and first-year head coach, or returning for a different part of the chapter of the Mountaineers in Rich Rodriguez.
Yeah, West Virginia, brand new and yet old era all at the same time. Very unique situation. 2 of those situations in the Big 12, obviously, this year with Scott Frost and UCF. But they were 6-7 last year, made the bowl game, able to do that by getting a win in the next to last week of the season against UCF, and then eventually lost their regular season finale, only to go to the Scooters Frisco Bowl, the Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl, and fall to Memphis and what would be the end of that particular era, and what was a close but entertaining game. So that's where we last left them, was as the losing side of things in the Frisco Bowl. But now obviously a lot has changed since. Oh, look, Paul just came out of the closet. He literally came out of the closet. That's why I said that. But
were you over there with your people?
Yeah.
No, listen. Yes, it's a closet, not the proverbial closet.
We have 3 of them too.
All right. So West Virginia, Rich Rod's back following last year's really like this kind of roller coaster, disgruntled sort of atmosphere that was surrounding West Virginia. Now it seems like it's. I mean, I don't know. We haven't checked in fully and probably won't for a while, but it seems like it's sunshine and rainbows and all of that. So what can Rich Rod actually do, and what kind of schedule are they looking at this year? Well, they have a down-the-middle schedule, 6 home games, 6 road games, and I didn't know the way to put this. I guess it was a day or two ago when we had a team that I think goes home and away, but no homestand is the best way to summarize that. There is no homestand
a baseball term.
on this schedule because they do play back-to-back road games at one point, but they do not play back-to-back home games at any point. So that is one thing that is unique about this particular schedule for West Virginia is the 6-6 format, which we have not seen that across the board. But also the no back-to-back home games. So they open up with Robert Morris on Saturday, August the 30th. And they don't have all Saturdays. There is one Friday game. They do avoid Thursdays, though. But Saturday, August 30th, Robert Morris. I mean, that'll be a feel-good. Like, they'll win 63-7. And everybody will feel great about Rich Rod being back. But then on Saturday, September 6th, they travel to Ohio for their first road trip of the season. As I mentioned, it goes on this back and forth for the most part. So to Ohio to take on the Bobcats there in week number 2. And then that will be followed up by the backyard brawl, Pitt and West Virginia. And what will be, I believe, the 108th meeting is what I wrote down between Pittsburgh and West Virginia. So back-to-back-to-back, and they will have a couple more games we'll get to before they get to their actual first bye. But there is the non-conference. Robert Morris at home, a trip to Ohio, and then the backyard brawl there at their home site there in Morgantown, which ought to be a raucous atmosphere. So that's how things will kick off. And obviously, you would expect them to be 2-0, but if Rich Rod can roll in and get that 3-0 start and beat Pitt right out of the gates, Pitt, then that would obviously have people going gaga pretty quickly up there in West Virginia.
It's amazing they didn't play for a decade, Pitt and West Virginia. They played 108 times, you're right, when they played this year. And they didn't play for 11 or 12 years. And that was such a big part of their schedule last year to start the year off, was that motions of playing Pitt, and it didn't work out for them.
Yeah, nope. You should never go through a year where that game doesn't get played. It should be written in any future amendments to the Constitution. We should codify rivalries like that one, and it's great. So I mean this is a good. They should be at least 2-1. Pitt, if Eli Holstein, Pitt's a weird team because with Eli Holstein, 6-0. Without Eli Holstein, 0-7. So we'll see. If he stays healthy, then
what a weird year
tough.
That was. Yeah. By the way, they didn't play for a long time because they were Pittsburgh, the Big East, and how that thing broke apart. And so they both left various places, Pitt to the ACC and West Virginia to the Big 12, and man, they didn't play each other for a long time.
Yeah, there was a good little break in the action, but they'll play 4 years in a row as of this year. So, that's kind of in the past at this point. But, 2022, they resumed it. Pitt got the win there at home. Then West Virginia returned serve at home 2 years ago. And then last year, Pitt obviously getting the win. So since they've resumed, Pitt, the home team has won each of these 3 meetings so far. So now rolling back to Morgantown, maybe it should play in their favor. So that's where they are as far as the non-conference. 2-1 is all but a guarantee. 3-0 is there as a possibility. But then still no break. They will roll into Saturday, September the 20th, and open Big 12 play at Kansas. Then the following week, back at home, they will take on Utah. And then their final game before their first break of the season, so they will have played 6 games in a row to start the season. They will play that one non-Saturday contest that I mentioned Friday night at BYU. So you get the whole Provo Friday night experience. They're right in the middle of the schedule as your 6th consecutive game. But you do get a break after this get 15 days because you'll play on that Friday. So you'll have a big old time for a breather there following the BYU road trip. But, you got Pitt, you got road trip to Kansas, road trip to BYU on a Friday night, Utah at home. So, that's the first stretch of the season for Rich Rodriguez and his Mountaineers.
It's a long trip to Provo, a couple of time zones. Of course, that's part of college sports, as we discussed with John Wilner. But a Friday night in Provo.
That's not what I want to see on my schedule, honestly, especially just with the expectations that BYU is also anticipating being pretty good. So it's like one thing when it was a couple years ago and you're like, damn, this crowd and but like add in that they're actually pretty good on top of that, and yeah, that's a recipe for maybe getting your first loss or your second loss or whatever the case may be, or getting a massive win. But that'll definitely be tough because that'll be a unique atmosphere.
All right.
Yeah, I mean this is when you jump out of it like Pitt, Kansas, Utah, BYU, that's tough. But they do get 2 of those games in Morgantown, which is classically a terribly difficult place to play for many, and for Utah especially to have to come all the way over there. I think that would be that. So.
Is that the longest stretch to start the year without a bye? And I know we've done 16 teams, but it seems like everyone's had kind of one early. I don't know, Colorado might have had a long stretch.
No, I don't think so. I think there's a couple of others maybe that have like a 6 or 7, maybe not more than 6, but I think there's a couple of others that we've done off the top of my head that have had that. So after the BYU road trip, you get a break finally. 15 days from that game until your next road trip, which is at UCF. So you will head on down to Orlando on Saturday, October the 18th. Then you turn around and finally back at home. It'll be your first home game in nearly a month because you will have had that Utah game, and then you travel to BYU, and then you get the bye, and then you go to UCF, and so finally you're back home nearly a month later and taking on TCU, which ought to be a pretty competitive team this year. The following week, November the 1st, you go to Texas, and not as far south as you can go, but pretty South Texas there with the city of Houston and the Cougs. Saturday, November the 8th, you will be back at home against Colorado. Following weekend, back on the road, as I mentioned, back and forth. Except for the 2 road trips right there in the middle with the bye week sandwiched in between. So back on the road, you get the reigning Big 12 champion Arizona State Sun Devils. And then finally to close it out, you will have your second bye week after that Arizona State game. And then you will have that 2 weeks to prepare for your regular season finale, which sees you at home against Texas Tech, which for all we know, that could be like play to get in the Big 12 title game for one or both schools. But we do expect Tech to be pretty good. So you get Arizona State and Tech those final 2 weeks of the regular season schedule, but with a bye week sandwiched in between there. So a very late bye week, but you may need it all to get ready for what could be a pretty formidable Texas Tech team. So there you go. The teams they don't play, I had it written down just a second ago over here. I thought I did. What did I do with that?
Can I give them?
Yeah, go ahead. I thought I had it, but yeah, go ahead, I guess.
Baylor, Arizona. You mentioned TCU already, right?
Iowa State.
Cincinnati.
Here we go. Arizona, Baylor, Cincinnati, Iowa State, K-State, Oklahoma State. So Arizona, Baylor, Cincy, Iowa State, K-State, Oklahoma State. So I think of the teams you expect to be pretty good, Baylor, Iowa State, K-State would be the ones that jump out there. But again, it's a new year. We don't really know that. Arizona struggled mightily a year ago. Brent Brennan could be on the hot seat. Cincinnati, same situation, although had some ebbs and flows. And then Oklahoma State, I mean, that's 3 games right there. All the coaches might get fired if they don't have better years between Arizona, Cincinnati, and Oklahoma State. So you don't face any of those 3, which could be a drawback, but you do get to avoid Iowa State, K-State, and Baylor, depending on how you look at them.
I think the game I'm looking forward to most on West Virginia's schedule, and maybe UCF's as well, is the Run It Back Bowl on October 18th.
The 2 head coaches playing each other who have just returned to their old stomping grounds.
Yeah. The Run It, like Ren Baker and Terry Mahajer can argue about who had that idea first.
Right.
Did they play UCF and West Virginia much at all before UCF became part of the Big 12?
I don't know. I mean, like, it's been a long.
I could have
I'm
just
definitely
Googled
not
that.
using anything like that, but no, they've played 4 times. They played the last 2 years. Obviously they've been Big 12 mates for a couple of years, but they played the last 2 years, and they played in 03 and 04. Those were the only other 2 meetings. Rich Rod was the head coach for both of those games, whereas UCF had Mike Krzyzek, and then you had George O'Leary's first year there in Orlando. But West Virginia's won all 4 of the meetings between those 2 teams. shout out to Winsipedia as always for always coming through in the clutch for questions like that. But yeah, they've played a handful of times.
I tell you what, the bye or the off week, it's not a bye, the off week between Arizona State and then hosting Texas Tech will set up perfectly when Rich Rod takes them to an Arizona State type run into the college football playoff, and so they'll have that break right before the run begins.
Okay.
I said it.
Yeah, I will say on the Backyard Brawl, mentioned that it's going on like its fourth consecutive year. There is going to be another break in the contract, but they have already signed the new deal, and it will resume again in 2029. So I feel like that's one of those you should, if you had your way, you would want to play that probably every year. But it is going to take a brief pause. So enjoy it this season because you won't see it again for another 3 or 4 years. And hell, by the time we get there, that's when all this other stuff will be popping off. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe they're in the same conference at that point. But this will be the last Backyard Brawl for a few years. So, yeah, I think I find them really interesting because I know Rich Rod's a good coach. Jacksonville State was really good last year, and he knows West Virginia. So
he knows.
I feel like they could be pretty good pretty quick. I think this is a reasonable schedule. I mean, yeah, there's definitely some tough road trips. Going out to Provo on a Friday night's definitely at the top of the list of the toughest road trips. Going to Orlando, going to Tempe. But, I mean, I could see a path definitely to a bowl game, and I think a lot will probably hinge on that Backyard Brawl game, and we'll definitely have a good idea sort of where they are there. But bowl game, absolutely a possibility. Winning the Big 12, I mean, I'm not going to go there right now knowing what we don't know. But I don't think it's at all an impossibility to see Rich Rod hit the ground running there and have a pretty good amount of momentum throughout next season that they can build off of pretty quickly.
The guy, he's been successful. He plays an exciting brand of football. He knows what he needs. And in the end, they're going to end up with a guy that they get in there that comes in as a quarterback. I know that they have returning some talent from now, but he's going to get another guy that's, I don't know, you got to get a Pat White.
Well, he's got Nico Markey already.
You're right. I mean, but he's going to have a run where he has good quarterback play, and they will be, hopefully, for West Virginia fans back.
Yeah, so West Virginia, I'd say bowl game seems like it should be a certainty. You accomplished that last year, and I don't think this is a situation where the program's like starting over from scratch by any means. I think that they're looking to just ascend. So, you have some things to make up for. You lose a Wyatt Milam. You lose some good players. But definitely on paper, which is what this entire exercise is, just taking a look at the schedule, it's got some fun moments, some fun games, some fun road trips, and definitely some winnable games.
All right, Craig, West Virginia. So do we start the ACC? Just have fun with that?
I made Boston College graphic already.
You did not.
We did.
You people?
Us people, that's right.
Yeah, we'll do that. We kind of brought that up a couple of days ago, but we didn't pick a conference. But what the hell? We have to have ACC talk. How do we survive?
We've got to move into it now. We've been told the exit to get off on the highway by the biggest story in college football this week.
Well, man, we got to preview the teams the Big 12 is going to come and take you in a few years. You know?
Oh, dear God. Oh, my God. There's that 98% lies. All right, when we come back, Paul Catalina and also his top 5. We mentioned earlier in the week, North Star Funding Partners is one of our newest sponsors. By the way, now offering the new IRA Insured Retirement Advantage. For more information, go to NorthstarFundingPartners.com. This is 365 Sports. I just looked up. I've told you now forever, I've been endorsing Ideal MRI in Waco, the Ideal MRI in the Central Texas Marketplace in Waco off I-35. Forever, the average MRI is about $1,100. So I went online, I said, let me look at what people in California, it can be as $1,200. It can be in Dallas, $1,300. Philadelphia, up to $1,500. In Chicago, up to $1,500. But the average MRI, the average cost around the country is $1,325. It can go up as many as thousands of dollars. Thousands. Ideal MRI in Waco is $497 or less every single time. What is or less? Well, if you file insurance and they can get something taken out of the $497, they will. Dr. Rob Maxey, when they brought and discovered and put together this company, founded it. What a great idea. I like first one, $497? That's what it is. And state state-of-the-art imaging machine. I've been in it 5 times. 5 different times, including recently, 3 or 4 or 5 weeks ago, I went in it for yet another look at my middle of my back because I've been having these muscle spasms, and they were able to, the good news is there was nothing structural. But there does show some angriness across in parts of my vertebrae, which can create other things that create muscle spasms, etc. Dr. Rob Maxey and his staff have done an amazing job. Ideal MRI, $497 or less every single time. So if you are 2, 3, 4 hours away, it's worth the drive. Get in touch with your doctor, and if your doctor wants a new look or an MRI, they can call Ideal MRI and give you a referral, and it is worth the drive. It is worth the time, and they have been fantastic to work with at idealmri.com.
You might ask yourself what functional mushrooms are good for. Whether it's lion's mane, cordyceps, turkey tail, shiitake, reishi, they all serve a purpose.
You have ones for neurological health, ones for sleeping and gut health, and all these different areas. They pack a powerful punch. Functional mushrooms are, of the millions of mushrooms and fungi out there, the ones that we can actually ingest and benefit from as humans.
Like all adaptogens, they kind of adapt to what you need at the time that you need them.
We don't even really know that we're suffering. We just don't quite feel right. That's where these adaptogens come in and really start to close the gap and really start getting us closer to how we want to feel. Functional mushrooms have definitely re-energized me and helped me face each day with a new vigor for life. Learn ways that functional mushrooms can help you. Go to GetHumble.com.
You spent hours selecting your patio sofa. Choosing that grill would have taken weeks. Probably your car needed way more time. For sure, you would have spent months mulling over that pool of yours. Protecting your prized possessions needs no time, though. Just visit coversandall.com, create a custom size per your requirements, pick a fabric and personalize your cover, and leave the rest to us. Premium protection for all that you love.
This is Paul Catalina's Top 5 brought to you by Ticket Club. Forget the fees, just big savings. Click the link in the description to find out more.
Welcome into Paul Catalina's Top 5 presented by Ticket Club. Today, top 5 NFL free agency fits at wide receiver. A lot of wide receivers are in the water via trade or probably release. And let's get to some of the bigger names and find out where they fit. These are all veteran guys, so age is a factor and does come with some inherent risk. Keenan Allen, last year spent with the Bears, a very excellent career with the Chargers. I actually think you pair him with Nico Collins in Houston, give them a reliable target while Tank Dell, who will probably be out the entire year, recovers from that knee injury, maybe draft another guy, give Xavier Hutchinson some more looks. This could be very, very good for C.J. Stroud and the offense. He's a trusted pass catcher, a first down machine, and last year in Chicago, wasn't really the place for him and was just there on a short term anyway, but I think he can help out C.J. Stroud immensely. Number 4, Cooper Kupp on the trade block right now. I think if you throw him in that Lions offense with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams as another target, a guy to move the chains and get first downs, that could be lethal. Already with a running game that includes Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. You throw Cooper Kupp in that mix, Sam Laporte at tight end, that's an offense that will be greatly improved and has a great shot at winning the NFC and heading to a Super Bowl. Number 3, Stephon Diggs. I think he needs to go out west, go to the Chargers, Keenan Allen's former home. Now, a return to Houston might make sense for both sides as he comes off his torn ACL in September, but this is a proven commodity, a veteran guy who could come in and do some things for a very young wide receiver core and help out Justin Herbert in LA with Jim Harbaugh. I don't know, though, if he vibes with the Harbaugh vibe, but I do think that at least skill-wise and quarterback-wise, this would be a good fit for him. Number 2, Chris Godwin, a free agent who can help a lot of teams and is coming off a dislocated ankle. He's had a couple injuries, but bounced back well every time. He's Chris Godwin. He's a playmaker. I think it's best for him to just go back with Baker and Mike Evans and stay in Tampa. But if you're a team that needs a veteran wide receiver who can help you out, especially in a short 2 to 3 year deal, I think you could do a lot worse than Chris Godwin. This dude is a player, still only 29 years old. And can still make things happen. We're not talking about giving this guy a 5, 6, 7 year deal. We're talking about a 2-year deal of you and Chris Godwin, which is likely what he'll do, and he'll stay in Tampa with the Buccaneers. Number 1, Davante Adams. I chose this gif and not one from the Raiders or the Jets because I like happy Davante Adams. And look, you're going to see a top 5 tomorrow where I'm going to talk about his best buddy and former quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. But I think he needs to move on from Aaron Rodgers at this point in his career, and that would be great if he went to the Bills. You've got Keon Coleman, who's young, Khalil Shakir, who's young. You throw him in there in that mix of wide receivers, he can take them over the top. Everything you can do to beat Kansas City, go get Davante Adams, Bills. I think that would work out well. I'll also talk about him in a fit maybe a little closer to my heart later in the week, but we'll talk about that in a couple of days. That's going to do it for the top 5. Yeah, I'm talking NFL free agency. It's only a week away. Let's gear up for it. This is 365 Sports, and Smokey's going to let us out of the room in just 1 second.
We sure are, and we appreciate everybody that's been a part of it, even those
we love all you people.
Yeah, we do. And also appreciate the chat room. Really do. Also the great sponsors of what we do. Tonight, 10:30, 365 Sports Tonight of the local CW. Emery's working on that with 4 of our interviews and guests today. Every weeknight at 10:30. Garrett Ross, thank you, sir, for being a part of, not being a part of, running the mothership. I mean, absolutely the captain of the ship. Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak. I'm David Smoak. We're back at it again tomorrow. And we will talk college football, and whatever content or story that matters will be there for you like we are every day. I'm David Smoak. Thank you very much for your time. Have a great night, and good night, 365 Sports.